Chapter 3705. Near the Cloud Sky mountain range, the beast tide had already retreated. Countless wild beasts in the Cloud Sky mountain range left behind a large number of corpses before fleeing into the mountain range. Outside the Cloud Sky city, there were beast corpses everywhere. There were even some beast king corpses among them. Among the countless wild beasts in the Cloud Sky mountain range, the ones that could become beast kings were extremely powerful and had condensed beast cores in their bodies. These beast king corpses became the targets of competition between the cultivators in the Cloud Sky city and the cultivators from outside. Yang Zhan's shout offended all the cultivators outside the North Gate. However, no one dared to say anything. He rode on the armored barbaric bull king and charged towards the corpse of a beast king. This was a black tiger. To be precise, it was a black tiger king. This black tiger king was not small. It was lying on the ground with a broken arrow stuck in its forehead. It seemed like the arrow was the fatal wound of this black tiger king. Yang Zhan did not care so much. He rushed forward to dig out the beast crystal, but the armored barbaric bull king stomped on the black tiger king's head and crushed it. The armored barbaric bull king directly swallowed the beast crystal in the black tiger king's head. This time, Yang Zhan was dumbfounded. After eating the black tiger king's beast crystal, the aura emitted by the armored barbaric bull king gradually became stronger. The ferocious aura caused the surrounding cultivators to feel their hearts palpitate. They hurriedly hid far away. What a joke. This was a beast king, a living beast king. It was not like the dead beast kings outside the city. My beast crystal. Yang Zhan could not do anything. He did not dare to fight with the armored barbaric bull king for its beast crystal. Soon, Yang Zhan and the armored barbaric bull king dealt with 8 beast kings. Originally, he should have obtained 8 beast crystals. However, because of the armored barbaric bull king's interference, he only obtained 3. The other 5 beast crystals were eaten by the armored barbaric bull king. This almost drove Yang Zhan crazy. Those were 5 beast crystals. 5 beast crystals could allow him to break through his bottleneck and become a Xiantian expert. Now, he only obtained 3 beast crystals. Brother Ox, you go to the east gate. I'll go to the south gate. Yang Zhan didn't wait for the armored barbaric ox king to respond. He leaped off the ox's back and rushed toward the south gate. He and the armored barbaric ox king had already dealt with the beast king's corpse at the north gate. The armored barbaric ox king could only charge towards the east gate. Aside from the north gate, there were still many beast king corpses lying outside the other 3 gates. No one had bothered to deal with them. Naturally, by then, the cultivators in Cloud Sky City had already started moving. Quite a number of them managed to obtain the beast crystals. Everyone, get lost. Arriving at the south gate, Yang Zhan roared again. Some of the cultivators who were handling the corpses of the beast kings were enraged and were about to scold Yang Zhan, but when they saw Yang Zhan's face, they were dumbfounded. No one dared to speak. Previously, Yang Zhan had displayed his prowess in the sky above Cloud Heaven City and killed the strongest of the 3 beast sovereigns, the rock beast sovereign. The invincible scene was witnessed by the cultivators in the city. Now, Yang Zhan was famous in Cloud Sky City. He was even more awesome than the city lord of Cloud Sky City. The cultivators who were digging for beast crystals outside the south gate all stopped and immediately turned to leave. These cultivators did not dare to show any dissatisfaction. At least these guys are tactful. Yang Zhan couldn't help but feel proud as he watched the cultivators leave. There were 7 beast kings outside the south gate. 2 of them had their beast crystals dug out, but the remaining 5 still had their beast crystals. Yang Zhan was very happy and quickly started digging for the beast crystals. Very quickly, he obtained 5 beast crystals. In addition to the 3 from before, he now had 8 beast crystals. Yang Zhan directly rushed towards the west gate. At this time, there was a sea of people outside the west gate. They were all moving the beast corpses. There were a few places outside the west gate that mortals did not dare to approach. Moo! At this time, the armored barbaric ox king also arrived outside the west gate. When Yang Zhan saw this, he immediately pounced towards the beast king corpse closest to him. While Yang Zhan and the armored barbaric ox king were fighting over the beast crystals, The eyes of the cultivators in the city all fell on the city lord's mansion. The city lord and the others have been standing there for more than an hour. That guy called Gu Fei still hasn't come out. Outside the city lord's mansion, the battle generals were whispering. That guy called Gu Fei, what kind of background does he have? How would I know? That guy is really mysterious. The cultivators gathered outside the city lord's mansion were also whispering. No one was optimistic about the city lord's chances. However, if the Yun family wanted to continue being the ruler of Cloud Sky City, they would need the approval of someone in the city lord's mansion. Time continued to pass. The city lord of Cloud Sky City and the others had waited for 3 days. These 3 days were the most difficult for them to endure. At this time, Gu Fei was still resting on the throne in the main hall. On the east wall of the city lord's mansion stood a cultivator with white teeth and red lips. This person was the little overlord of the Feng clan, Feng Yu. Behind Feng Yu stood 2 young men dressed in black. These 2 young men dressed in black carefully stood behind Feng Yu. They seemed a little nervous because Feng Yu was the #1 person among the younger generation of the Feng clan. At this time, a group of people arrived in front of Cloud Sky City. They were extremely shocked when they saw the rivers of blood and the countless beast corpses on the ground. There were 22 people in this group. The leader was a bald young man who was blind in one eye. This young man's body actually emitted an aura that only beasts could emit. At this time, outside the west gate, Yang Zhan, who had just dug out a beast crystal from the Beast King's body, suddenly saw a group of people walking towards Cloud Sky City. However, he actually saw a familiar figure in this group. Lei Dong. He saw Lei Dong, a disciple of the Lei clan with an extremely powerful cultivation. Yang Zhan. At this moment, Lei Dong also saw Yang Zhan from within the group. Lei Dong's gaze suddenly fell on the beast crystal in Yang Zhan's hand. Lingering spiritual energy, this is good stuff. Lei Dong muttered to himself. Ever since he entered the trial grounds, he had been miserable. If he hadn't met this group of people, he would have died a long time ago. Yang Zhan, hurry up and come over here. Hand over the beast crystal in your hand. Lei Dong shouted at Yang Zhan. When Lei Dong's voice rang out, the people outside the west gate immediately quieted down. Even the countless mortals who were fighting over the beast corpses stopped talking. They all looked at Lei Dong in shock. This kid is awesome. Chapter 3706. Yingtian Sect's Primogeniture Mountain Ranges. 9 great trials were actually not created by a supreme existence to allow Yingtian Sect's Primogeniture Mountain Ranges 9 great trials. The 9 stone doors were actually an inferior world discovered by Yingtian Sect that had been abandoned by the Primogeniture realm for countless years. Due to the fact that the laws of heaven and earth were very incomplete, the great figures of the Primogeniture realm simply didn't care about such a lowly world. A power like Yingtian Sect could only be considered a second-rate power in the Primogeniture realm. Only a power with an extreme supremacy could become one of the strongest powers in the Primogeniture realm. A power with a quasi-supremacy like Yingtian Sect could only be considered a second-rate power. It wasn't even a first-rate power, let alone one of the strongest super first-rate powers. Even the Yingtianzong only treated this relic as a training ground for their disciples. This trial was actually very simple. Within 10 days, if one could come out of the trial in perfect condition, it would be considered as completing the trial. Of course, this was only the first trial of Yingtian Sect's entry trial. After this trial, the young cultivators who came out of the trial would have the right to enter Yingtian Sect. However, this was only the right to enter Yingtian Sect. After that, these young cultivators would have to undergo a large competition. At this time, those who won the competition would have the opportunity to become the disciples of the Yingtian Sect's elders. Those who lost in the competition could only become ordinary disciples of Yingtian Sect, or even servants. Becoming an elder's disciple would allow one to reach the heavens in a single step. This was the goal of all young disciples who wanted to enter Yingtian Sect. However, to be chosen by the elders of the Yingtian Sect, one would have to display extraordinary cultivation and talent. Although Lei Dong was the most outstanding figure of the Lei clan's younger generation, he was still quite inferior to the Feng clan's little overlord, Feng Yu. One had to know that Feng Yu was an expert that surpassed the Xiantian realm. In Gu Fei's opinion, Feng was in existence at the void-controlling realm, only one step away from becoming a demigod. Above that was the paramount saint realm. In fact, cultivators could already break through to the immortal god realm when they were in the demigod realm. This was because the paramount saint realm was the realm between the demigod realm and the immortal god realm. Lei Dong wanted to raise his cultivation as soon as possible, and it would be best if he could break through to the void-controlling realm in the training grounds. In this way, he might be chosen by one of the elders of the Ying Tian sect. Lei Dong's big brother, Lei Zhan, was chosen by an elder of Ying Tian courtyard and became an elder's disciple. In a short 10 years, he successfully cultivated to become an immortal. The beast crystals of the beast kings in the Cloud Sky Mountain range were treasures that could increase one's cultivation. Before Lei Dong participated in the trial, he had already learned about this from his big brother. Therefore, when he saw Yang Zhan collecting the beast crystals, he immediately jumped out and yelled at Yang Zhan arrogantly, wanting him to obediently hand over the beast crystals. When Lei Dong shouted at Yang Zhan, everyone outside the west gate was shocked. This guy was too arrogant. He actually dared to shout at Gu Fei's men. Lei Dong. When Yang Zhan saw this guy, his pupils shrank. This guy was still as arrogant as ever. What are you, deaf? Why aren't you kneeling down and handing over the beast crystals? Lei Dong was like a high and mighty ruler, looking down on Yang Zhan. He was a Khanate cultivator, while Yang Zhan was only at the peak of the acquired realm. There was nothing wrong with the strong looking down on the weak. However, at this moment, everyone outside the west gate looked at Lei Dong as if he was an idiot. Are you sure you want me to kneel down and hand over the beast crystals to you? Yang Zhan looked at Lei Dong with a smile that wasn't a smile. What? You're just a little Khanate cultivator. Do you want to ignore my words? Lei Dong's expression instantly turned cold. At this moment, all the cultivators outside the west gate were looking at Lei Dong. Lei Dong also noticed that the people around him were looking at him strangely, but he didn't care. Moo! At this moment, a huge beast suddenly stood up from afar. A pair of big red eyes stared fiercely at Lei Dong, and a strong killing intent erupted from the body of this beast king. The cultivators around the west gate hurriedly retreated in fear. Even the mortals who were handling the beast corpses were terrified and rushed towards the city gate. At this moment, the leader of Lei Dong's group, the bald youth who was blind in one eye, retreated without making a sound. Iron-armored Bull King? Someone exclaimed. You want my beast crystals? Let's see if you have the ability. Yang Zhan suddenly said with a smile. Lei Dong stared in shock at the armored Bull King that was spewing out white gas from its nostrils. How could there be a living beast king here? He didn't expect that there would be another beast king at the west gate. He also didn't expect that this beast king had already been subdued. Little bull, kill him. Yang Zhan couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Lei Dong. He pointed at the beast king in the distance and said, What? When Lei Dong heard Yang Zhan's words, he was shocked. How is this possible? How could this iron-armored Bull King listen to Yang Zhan's orders? One had to know that this iron-armored Bull King was a beast king. It was much stronger than a Xiantian expert. How could it listen to a Hotian realm cultivator? Yang Zhan, are you trying to scare me? You think you can order the iron-armored Bull King? What a joke. Lei Dong said disdainfully. He thought that this beast king would listen to Yang Zhan's orders. However, he didn't know why this iron-armored Bull King had its eyes on him. This was very bad for him. Little bull, what are you waiting for? Kill him, and I'll give you a beast crystal. Yang Zhan said directly to the iron-armored Bull King in the distance. The iron-armored Bull King looked at the beast crystal in Yang Zhan's hand. Then, it lowered its body and exerted force with its 4 hooves. In the next moment, the beast king rushed towards Lei Dong like an arrow. When Lei Dong saw that the armored barbaric ox king was actually charging towards him, he was extremely shocked. How is this possible? Lei Dong was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that Yang Zhan could actually summon this beast king. At this time, all the cultivators outside the west gate of Cloud Sky City looked at Lei Dong with schadenfreude. This guy must be tired of living. He actually dared to provoke this fierce person. Even the bald young man in Lei Dong's group had a glint in his eyes. He stared at Yang Zhan and wondered where this guy came from. Chapter 3707. Outside the west gate of the cloudy sky city, Lei Dong was dumbfounded. He had never expected Yang Zhan to be able to command the armored barbaric bull king. What the hell is going on? Lei Dong was sweating profusely. The armored barbaric bull king had arrived in front of him in an instant, and a gust of wind blew in his face. Swoosh! Lei Dong soared into the sky, and the armored barbaric bull king charged right under his feet. If he had been half a step slower, he would have been crushed by the beast king. After all, he was an inborn expert. In the world of mortals, he was considered an expert. However, in the face of an immortal, he was nothing more than an ant. Lei Dong cultivated the lightning Dao technique, and his movement technique was as fast as lightning. If it was an ordinary inborn expert, he would not be able to dodge the armored barbaric bull king's charge. Moo! The armored barbaric bull king bellowed, turned around, and used its sharp horns to pick Lei Dong. As long as Lei Dong was hit, he would definitely be pierced by the horns. Lei Dong roared and struck out with his palm. The heavy palm force landed directly on the armored barbaric bull king's head. He felt as though his right palm had struck a piece of divine metal. Not only did he not hurt the beast king, but his right hand was also numb from the impact. Damn it! Lei Dong made use of the recoil force to turn into a phantom and retreat. However, the armored barbaric bull king had been struck by Lei Dong's palm, and it had triggered the beast king's ferocity. The armored barbaric ox king roared in anger and chased after Lei Dong. Its speed was also extremely fast. Lei Dong, didn't you want my beast crystals? Why? You don't want them anymore? Yang Zhan shouted at Lei Dong, who was retreating pathetically. How could Lei Dong have the time to care about Yang Zhan now? Survival was the most important thing now. This was a battle without any suspense. Lei Dong, an inborn expert, was actually being chased by the armored barbaric bull king. All the cultivators were shocked. The armored barbaric bull king could actually ignore an inborn expert. It seemed like this beast king was not to be trifled with. As Lei Dong dodged the barbaric armored ox king's attacks, he brought out his weapon. It was a battle lance. Additionally, it was an immortal artifact that was even stronger than a spirit artifact. That's right, it was an immortal artifact. This was given to him by Lei Dong's big brother Immortal before he entered the trial grounds. He thought that he wouldn't need to use this immortal artifact, but now, it would appear that he had no choice but to use this immortal artifact. Evil creature, die. Lei Dong took advantage of this opportunity and charged towards the armored barbaric ox king with his immortal spear. His spear stabbed towards the armored barbaric ox king's forehead. The armored barbaric ox king rolled to the side, dodging Lei Dong's spear. However, the armored barbaric ox king was still grazed by Lei Dong's spear. Its incomparably hard scales were directly pierced through, leaving a bloody mark on the beast king's body. What? Yang Zhan couldn't help being startled by this scene. Lei Dong was truly formidable. He had almost managed to kill the armored bull king with a counterattack. Moo! The armored barbaric ox king was infuriated. The beast king's forehooves pushed off the ground, and its huge body directly shot up from the ground, pouncing towards Lei Dong. Kill! Lei Dong bellowed. The immortal spear in his hand turned into a dazzling immortal light that pierced towards the armored barbaric ox king. Lei Dong smirked disdainfully. How could a mere mortal body contend against an immortal artifact? Even if Lei Dong couldn't fully activate the immortal spear's power, it wasn't something that an ordinary Xiantian expert could withstand. Even a void-controlling realm expert or a demigod realm expert wouldn't dare to take a blow from the immortal spear head-on. Swish! Right at that moment, the armored barbaric ox king suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a fireball. Within the fireball was a divine pearl. Boom! Lei Dong's immortal spear instantly collided with the divine pearl of raging flames spat out by the armored barbaric ox king, resulting in a loud explosion. In the next moment, Lei Dong felt a jolt in his right hand that was holding the immortal spear. An intense pain came from his hand, and the immortal spear in his hand flew out of his hand. He lowered his head and saw that his hand was covered in blood. How is this possible? Lei Dong couldn't believe it. One should know that the weapon in his hand was an immortal artifact. An immortal artifact was actually sent flying by the opponent's pearl? If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would believe it. However, at this moment, the fireball directly smashed into Lei Dong's body. In the next moment, Lei Dong's entire body was enveloped by divine flames. Lei Dong screamed, but very quickly, his screams completely disappeared. This was because he had already been burnt to ashes, leaving nothing behind. To be more precise, although Lei Dong was dead, he left behind an immortal artifact, an immortal spear. Everyone's eyes were incomparably bloodshot. At this moment, the armored barbaric ox king opened its mouth and sucked the fireball into its mouth. The immortal spear that was sent flying fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. Immortal chi coiled around the body of the spear, and faint immortal runes could be faintly seen. Haha, this spear is actually an immortal artifact? Yang Zhan's figure flashed and instantly appeared next to the immortal spear. Just as he was about to reach for it, a hand suddenly reached out from the side and grabbed the immortal spear. What? Yang Zhan quickly turned around and saw that the person who grabbed the immortal spear was actually a bald young cultivator who was blind in one eye. I didn't expect that guy to have an immortal artifact on him. If I had known earlier, I would have killed him a long time ago. The one-eyed bald young man fiercely stared at the immortal spear in his hand, his single eye flashing with radiance. Yang Zhan was both shocked and furious. He never thought that someone would dare to snatch something from him. The fat meat was already in his mouth, but it was still going to be eaten. It was impossible for Yang Zhan not to be angry. With an immortal artifact in hand, the world is mine, haha. The one-eyed bald young man laughed loudly, his voice echoing far and wide, causing all the cultivators in the city to be incomparably shocked. Hey, who are you? Who the hell do you think you are? You actually dare to come here and act like this? Yang Zhan directly shouted at the one-eyed bald young man. He felt a sense of disgust when he looked at this fellow. This bald young man was clearly not a good person. Who am I? You aren't qualified to know, the one-eyed bald young man arrogantly said. Hearing this, Yang Zhan immediately burst into laughter. This fellow actually dared to say that he wasn't qualified to know his name? Was he not afraid that the wind would cut his tongue? Moo. At this time, a low voice rang out. Everyone turned towards the direction of the voice and saw that the armored barbaric ox king was actually staring at the one-eyed bald young man. For the fastest updated website for this book, please visit Yunlai Pavilion. Chapter 3708. After Gu Fei subdued the armored barbaric ox king, he casually tossed a fire element divine pearl to the armored barbaric ox king. To Gu Fei, this fire element divine pearl was just an artifact. He could casually grab a handful of these immortal artifacts. However, to the armored barbaric ox king, this divine pearl was a supreme treasure among supreme treasures. It was a legendary immortal artifact. With this divine pearl, this beast king was qualified to become a beast sovereign. If it wasn't for the protection of this divine pearl, the armored barbaric ox king would have been killed by Lei Dong. Unfortunately, Lei Dong was the one who died this time. He originally thought that he could sweep through everything with an immortal artifact, but in the end, he still ended up dead. At this moment, the armored barbaric ox king stared at the bald youth in black. Little ox, he said that I'm not qualified to know his name. What do you think? Yang Zhan crossed his arms and looked at the bald youth with a faint smile. Moo. The armored barbaric ox king let out a low roar, and the space around it rippled like water. In such a low-grade world, cultivators above the Xiantian realm could shake the void, and immortals could easily destroy a region. The reason for this was naturally because the laws of the low-grade world were incomplete. The void of the low-grade world was the weakest. The armored barbaric ox king's red eyes stared at the bald youth holding the immortal spear. At this moment, the only eye on the bald youth emitted a dazzling light. No one could remain calm after being stared at by a beast king that could easily kill an Xiantian realm expert. Moreover, this beast king had just used a fairy weapon to destroy Lei Dong's body and soul. I'll give you a chance. Return the spear to me, and then scram. How about it? Yang Zhan looked at the bald youth playfully. The bald youth tightened his grip on the immortal spear. This was an immortal artifact. How could he hand it over? He knew better than anyone what an immortal artifact represented. Yang Zhan could clearly see the reluctance in the bald youth's single eye. He shook his head and said, "I've already given you a chance. In that case, I have no other choice. This is your choice. You can't blame others." Swoosh! The one-eyed bald youth soared into the sky and fled into the distance. In the end, he still couldn't bear to hand over the immortal artifact that he had already obtained, so he fled with all his might. "Xiaoniao, go!" Yang Zhan pointed at the fleeing fellow. Moo! The armored barbaric ox king immediately let out a low roar, and its 4 hooves stomped on the air as it charged up from the ground, chasing after the fleeing one-eyed bald youth. Everyone was indescribably shocked when they saw this scene. That person actually dared to snatch Yang Zhan's spoils of war? Wasn't this courting death? Without any suspense, the armored barbaric ox king caught up to the one-eyed bald young man. Seeing that he couldn't escape, he turned around and started fighting the armored barbarian ox king. The immortal spear in his hand stabbed at the armored barbarian ox king. The armored barbaric ox king dodged to the side with extreme speed. What? The one-eyed bald youth was shocked. The battle prowess displayed by this beast king seemed to be even stronger than when it had killed Lei Dong. This made him extremely shocked. Boom! In the next moment, the body of the armored barbaric ox king burst into flames. In an instant, the beast king had turned into a flaming ox. The armored barbaric ox king had advanced and transformed into an armored flaming ox emperor. A powerful aura erupted from the body of this beast king, and the divine fire that erupted from the body of this beast king caused the surrounding void to distort. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the scene in the sky. Even Yang Zhan's mouth was wide open in shock. The powerful pressure emitted from the body of the armored flaming ox emperor caused countless cultivators to almost be unable to breathe. Even the big shots in Cloudy Sky City were alarmed. That beast king actually advanced. Someone on top of Cloudy Sky City exclaimed, "How is this possible?" Some people found it hard to believe. Although the physique of beasts was stronger than that of humans, it was much more difficult for beasts to cultivate. In fact, there weren't many beast kings in the entire Cloudy Sky mountain range, and there were even fewer beast kings. But now, the armored barbaric ox king had actually advanced at this moment. It had advanced from a beast king to a beast king. The one-eyed bald young man immediately turned around and fled. With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to contend against a beast king. The pressure that erupted from the armored barbaric ox king was enough to shake his soul. However, just as the one-eyed bald young man was about 100 feet away, the armored flaming ox emperor turned into a flame and instantly caught up to him. It directly collided with him. The speed of the armored flaming ox emperor was too fast. The one-eyed bald young man didn't even have time to scream before he was directly smashed by the armored flaming ox emperor. The divine fire burned the unlucky guy into ashes. A battle spear fell from the sky and directly stabbed into the ground. Everyone was stunned by the scene in the sky. It actually advanced. Yang Zhan looked at the armored flaming ox emperor bathed in divine fire in the sky and was extremely envious. When would he be able to break through the shackles of cultivation and become a Xiantian expert? In fact, Yang Zhan was very clear about his own situation. Even if he passed the trial and entered Tianzong, he was afraid that he could only be a part-time disciple. A part-time disciple of Tianzong was the disciple with the lowest seniority and the lowest status in Tianzong. One had to know that although part-time disciples were called disciples, they were actually servants of Tianzong. Any disciple with a bit of status could order a part-time disciple around. However, if his cultivation could break through to the Xiantian realm, then he would have the opportunity to become an elder's disciple. Even if he couldn't become an elder's disciple, he could still become an ordinary true disciple. Even becoming an ordinary true disciple would be better than being a part-time disciple. Thinking of this, Yang Zhan couldn't help but turn around and look in the direction of the city lord's mansion. This armored flaming ox emperor's luck was too good to have encountered Gu Fei. The things that Gu Fei casually gave out were all immortal items. Yang Zhan shook his head to clear his mind. Then, he walked step by step towards the immortal spear that was stabbed into the ground. At this time, no one dared to make a move against Yang Zhan for the immortal spear. Yang Zhan directly arrived in front of the immortal spear and proudly swept his eyes around. Although he didn't say anything, no cultivator dared to look at him. Boom! At this time, a loud bang resounded and the ground shook. The armored flaming ox emperor in the sky fell down from the sky like a fireball, landing in front of Yang Zhan. "Oh my God! You scared me." Yang Zhan was startled and said. At this time, the armored flaming ox emperor stared at Yang Zhan. A powerful emperor aura erupted from its body, pressuring Yang Zhan to the point that he couldn't stand up straight. I know. I will give you the beast crystal." Yang Zhan directly took out a fist-sized beast crystal and threw it to the armored flaming ox emperor. The iron-armored fire bull emperor swallowed the beast crystal in one gulp. Soon, an even more powerful aura spread out from the iron-armored fire bull emperor. Everyone was shocked. Chapter 3709. The armored barbaric ox king that Gu Fei had subdued had actually advanced. This was something that even Gu Fei had never expected. He had only casually tossed a god bead to the beast king. He had not done anything at all. It could only be said that this beast king's luck was not bad. The fire element immortal energy contained in that fire element divine pearl was very strong. Although the armored barbaric bull king could not refine the divine pearl, it was still able to refine the divine pearl. Although the iron armored bull king couldn't refine the bead, its body was constantly being nourished by the celestial fire energy from the fire element divine bead. As a result, the beast king successfully broke through its cultivation bottleneck and became a beast king, the king of the cloud sky mountain range. Yang Zhan was very envious of the iron armored bull king. It had followed Gu Fei for so long, but it was still at the peak of the Hotian realm. When would it be able to break through to the Xiantian realm? At this moment, the iron-armored bull king swallowed the beast crystal that Yang Zhan threw to it and retreated to the side. Yang Zhan grabbed the immortal spear and pulled it out of the ground. The immortal spear was very heavy. Even with Yang Zhan's cultivation, it was difficult for him to pull it out. This kind of weapon could only be used by cultivators above the Xiantian realm. Even if a Hotian cultivator obtained an immortal artifact, they wouldn't be able to use it. Yang Zhan didn't care so much. Immortal artifact, he actually obtained an immortal artifact. He was very excited. It has to be said that this was something he didn't dare to imagine in the past. Outside the primogeniture mountain range, the Yang clan was just a little guy. The most powerful clan leader was only a peak Xiantian realm cultivator. Peak Xiantian realm was just a joke to those big clans. Just like the Feng clan, Feng Yu was a powerful existence that surpassed the Xiantian realm. Yang Zhan put the immortal spear in his hand into the storage bag on his waist. Then he waved at the iron-armored bull king and walked toward the city gate. At this time, the spectators outside the west gate woke up from their shock and continued to deal with the beast corpses outside the city. With the end of the beast tide, more and more people came to the Cloud Sky City. Most of them were outsiders who entered the trial ground. Time passed by. In the blink of an eye, 6 days had passed since the beast tide. In a few days, all the outsiders who entered the trial grounds would have to leave. During these 6 days, City Master Yun Tian of the Yun family and his son and daughter had been waiting outside the main hall of the City Master's mansion. At their level of cultivation, it wouldn't be a problem even if they didn't eat or drink for more than 10 days. Are you guys sick? Why are you still waiting? Yang Zhan walked in from outside and glanced at Yun, she and the others standing outside the main hall. He couldn't help but shake his head helplessly. Sincerity can split metal and stone, Yun Ao said indifferently. Tisk. Yang Zhan had a look of disdain on his face. For an existence like Gu Fei, as long as he didn't care about Yun Shi and the others, even if they stood outside the main hall until the seas dried up and the rocks crumbled, it would still be useless. At this time, the iron-armored Fire Bull Emperor was dozing off outside the main hall. It seemed to be sleeping, but it wasn't. There was a layer of fire on this Beast King's body. The iron-armored Fire Bull Emperor originally cultivated the Fire Elemental cultivation technique. In addition to the Fire Elemental Divine Pearl that Gu Fei threw to it, The iron-armored Fire Bull Emperor's cultivation base rose along with it. Then you guys can continue. Yang Zhan shook his head helplessly. The time of the trial was almost up, and they were about to leave this place. However, his cultivation base still hadn't broken through to the Xiantian realm. This was definitely not a good thing for Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan didn't pay any more attention to Yun Shi and the others. He went straight to the cultivation room. Today, he was going to try to break through to the Xiantian realm. Success or failure would be decided by one move. Yun Shi and the others looked at Yang Zhan's back with envy. On the 8th day, the young cultivators who entered the trial through the 9 stone gates continued to arrive at the Cloudy Sky City. The city was overcrowded. On this evening, Wang Long finally arrived at the Cloudy Sky City. At this time, Wang Long was in an extremely sorry state. His clothes were ragged and hung on his body like rags. There were 5 or 6 young cultivators who entered the Cloudy Sky City with Wang Long. These people must have formed a group to make it to the Cloudy Sky City. This was actually a good method. One must know that one person's power was limited. However, if one formed a group, the chances of successfully passing the trial would increase greatly. Wang Long came, and so did Ling Feng. However, compared to Wang Long, Ling Feng was much more miserable. He was crippled and had to crawl to the Cloudy Sky City. No one sympathized with him. Those who participated in the Ying Tian sect's entrance trial couldn't wait for others to suffer. Who would be willing to help or save others? If others lost the right to enter the Ying Tian sect, their chances of successfully entering the Ying Tian sect would increase. In the primogenitor's realm, where the strong preyed on the weak, everyone was very cold and ruthless. When Wang Long saw Ling Feng, he was sitting in the corner of the north gate. He looked at Ling Feng and suddenly sighed. Then, he left without saying anything. Ling Feng naturally saw Wang Long. His lips moved, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He had already lost the right to enter the Ying Tian sect. With a crippled leg, he was the loser of the entrance trial. Wang Long, on the other hand, was not injured and had successfully arrived at the Cloudy Sky City. He was the winner and could enter the Ying Tian sect. Compared to Ling Feng, Wang Long was destined to soar, but Ling Feng's fate was destined to be a tragedy. Of course, Ling Feng was still alive. Compared to Lei Dong, he was much luckier. On the 9th day, an extremely powerful aura suddenly came from the cultivation room of the Cloudy Sky City's City Lord Mansion. An astonishing pressure spread out from the mansion. What's going on? What happened? Yun Shi and the others were indescribably shocked outside the main gate of the mansion. A powerful pressure of the Xiantian realm had arrived, causing them to involuntarily be moved. As for the cultivators outside the City Lord Mansion, they were utterly shocked. All the cultivators in the Cloudy Sky City felt the powerful pressure coming from the mansion. The entire city was shocked. This aura, Wang Long happened to be near the mansion. When he felt the mighty aura coming from the mansion, he couldn't help but be shocked. He actually broke through to the Xiantian realm. How is this possible? Wang Long hurriedly rushed out of the mansion. Suddenly, a figure charged out from the cultivation room to appear in the open space before the main hall. A formidable innate aura of power radiated out from the figure, causing the cultivators outside the City Lord residence to feel suffocated. So, it's really him. At this time, Wang Long, who was outside the mansion, was shocked. He couldn't believe that the person inside the mansion was Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan's cultivation had actually broken through to the Xiantian realm. How was this possible? Although Wang Long couldn't believe it, the truth spoke louder than words. Yang Zhan had actually become a Xiantian realm expert. Chapter 37:10. The pressure of the Xiantian realm spread out in all directions from the City Lord's mansion, shaking the entire city. Even the City Lord couldn't help but be moved. This person was only at the peak of the acquired realm before. How could he have broken through to the Xiantian realm in such a short time? Could this also be the work of that Gu Fei? The City Lord thought to himself. He was really curious as to what kind of existence the black-clothed young man in the main hall was. How could he have such a method? At this moment, Yang Zhan, who was standing in the open space in front of the main hall, was extremely excited. His eyes were as bright as the stars, but the divine light in his eyes began to fade quickly. The powerful Xiantian realm aura also receded like the tide, completely disappearing from Yang Zhan's body. At this moment, his entire person seemed to have changed. His skin became smoother, and there seemed to be a layer of light flowing on it. Yang Zhan's cultivation had finally broken through from the peak of the acquired realm to the Xiantian realm. This was definitely a leap. Whether it was his five senses, physical strength, speed, etc., they were all greatly enhanced. At this moment, he only felt that his entire person was different. It was as if he had been reborn, Especially at this moment, Yang Zhan had divine will. This was the difference between a acquired realm cultivator and a Xiantian realm cultivator. Divine will spread out from Yang Zhan's body, and in the next moment, countless information directly rushed into his mind from all directions. Buzz. Yang Zhan only felt his vision go black, and he almost fainted. This feeling was unprecedented. No one had taught him how to use divine will, and this was a big lesson for him. He quickly retracted his divine will, and then slowly spread it out. This time, he was very careful. He wanted to explore how to use divine will by himself. This is, as his divine will spread out, under the cover of his divine will, he felt many auras, some strong and some weak. These auras were like lamps, some bright and some dark. Among the cultivators outside the city, there were actually 9 extremely strong auras. These 9 people, each one of them was as dazzling as a divine sun. Xiantian realm experts? Yang Zhan was extremely shocked. There were actually so many Xiantian realm experts in this cloud sky city, and this was what he sensed with his divine will. There should be more inborn experts in Yuntian City than these 9. Little guy, didn't your parents tell you that you can't use your divine sense to investigate others? At this time, a voice suddenly sounded in Yang Zhan's mind. Yang Zhan was startled and quickly withdrew his divine sense. Actually, he also knew that the people outside just didn't want to be calculative with him. Otherwise, those inborn experts would have attacked him long ago. At least, he had arrived at Cloudy Sky City safely. However, Ling Feng was extremely miserable. Seeing that Wang Long wanted to say something, Yang Zhan thought that Wang Long had something that he could not say. Hence, he did not pursue the matter. Brother Wang, do you want to go in and have a seat? Yang Zhan asked. I think we should forget about it. Wang Long really did not have the face to see Gu Fei. In that case, let's meet again at Indian sect. Yang Zhan said. Wang Long was unlucky, but he could not blame anyone else. If he had been willing to support Gu Fei and stand on Gu Fei's side, he might have been able to break through the Hotian realm and become an innate realm expert. Goodbye. Wang Long cupped his hands at Yang Zhan and turned to leave. Soon, he disappeared into the crowd. Brother Yang, congratulations on breaking through to the innate realm. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the crowd. Then, a cultivator who looked like a child walked out from the crowd. Feng Yu. When Yang Zhan saw this person, he was shocked. This person was the little overlord of the Feng clan, Feng Yu. This Feng Yu was incredible. He was an existence that had surpassed the innate realm. This made Yang Zhan feel flattered. Why did this person, whom he looked up to, come to find him? Brother Yang, what happened between us that day was just a misunderstanding. I, your little brother, am here to ask for your forgiveness. Feng Yu came before Yang Zhan and cupped his hands at him. What is this guy trying to do? Yang Zhan looked at Feng Yu cautiously. He was bewildered. Yang Zhan no longer paid attention to the others, directly turning around and walking into the city lord's mansion. At this time, he needed to stabilize his cultivation. Moreover, he had just broken through to the Xiantian realm, and his body was undergoing some kind of change. The impurities in his body were beginning to be expelled from his body. That Yang Zhan actually dared to look down on me. When we return to Yingtian sect, I'll make him pay. Feng Yu turned around and glanced in the direction of the city lord's mansion. He, Feng Yu, was not someone to be trifled with. Let's see how long Gu Fei can protect him. Without Gu Fei's protection, that Yang Zhan is just a scum. Lei Run of the Thunder Clan stared coldly at the city lord's mansion. His Thunder Clan was a family with an immortal. Moreover, Lei Dong's elder brother, Lei Zhan, was a legacy disciple of Yingtian sect's Yingtian side courtyard. Moreover, he had already cultivated to the immortal realm. Lei Dong was dead. As his elder brother, Lei Zhen naturally wouldn't let this matter rest. Many people were waiting to watch a good show. After returning to Yingtian side courtyard, there was still an entrance tournament. To be more precise, it was an entrance tournament. The top 10 disciples in the entrance tournament would be able to become the disciples of the elders. Time passed and Cloudy Sky City gradually regained its peace. On the 10th day, early in the morning, the doors of the city lord's mansion were opened from the inside. A figure walked out of the hall. The iron-armored Fire Bull Emperor, who was lying outside the hall's entrance, immediately stood up. A blazing aura spread from this beast emperor's body. Brother Gu, you finally came out. City Lord Yuntian, who had been waiting outside for so many days, quickly brought Yunao and Yunxi inside. City Lord Yuntian was very polite to Gu Fei. Seeing that their father was actually talking to Gu Fei as an equal, Yunao and Yunxi were extremely shocked. It's time to leave. Gu Fei looked up at the sky and said. At this moment, Yang Zhan came out of nowhere. You're leaving? Although Yunxi already knew that Gu Fei would leave, when Gu Fei really said that he was leaving, she was actually a little reluctant. How could this be? Hee, my little princess, are we going to stay here forever? Yang Zhan said to Yunxi with a smile. Gu Fei looked at Yunxi and said, to this world, we are just passers. Hearing Gu Fei's words, Yunxi's expression couldn't help but become a little sad. Brother Fei, is it almost time? Yang Zhan no longer paid attention to Yunxi and the others and looked at Gu Fei. Yes, about an hour or so. Gu Fei nodded and said, haha, we're going to enter Yingtian sect. Yang Zhan was overjoyed. Entering Yingtian sect was his dream. Hearing that they would be back in an hour or so, he was naturally very excited. Yingtian sect? You guys really came from the same place. City Lord Yuntian suddenly said, Brother Gu, please take us out of here. City Lord Yuntian suddenly knelt in front of Gu Fei. As soon as City Lord Yuntian knelt, Yunxi and Yunao also quickly knelt. What are you guys doing? Seeing this, Yang Zhan became unhappy. Gu Fei didn't say anything and only looked at Yunxi. The strongest beings here are golden immortals. We have no future here. I heard that the place you guys came from has even stronger beings. We want to become even stronger. City Lord Yuntian quickly said. One had to admit that City Lord Yuntian was very ambitious. At this moment, everyone outside the City Lord mansion was shocked. The City Lord, a golden immortal, actually knelt in front of a black-robed youth. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? How is this possible? Everyone couldn't believe it. Gu Fei thought for a moment and said, if I take you guys out of here, what benefits will I get? There is no free lunch in this world. Something like a pie falling from the sky will never happen in front of Gu Fei. If you want something, you must pay a price. No one can casually succeed. When City Lord Yuntian and the others heard this, they were startled. For a moment, they did not know what to say. Chapter 37:12. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. If the Cloud Sky City Lord wanted to leave the training ground, he would have to pay a certain price. Think about it carefully. There are still 2 hours left. Gu Fei looked at the Cloud Sky City Lord indifferently and said, to him, bringing the Cloud Sky City Lord and the others out of the training ground was not a difficult task. It could be said that it was as easy as lifting a hand. Gu Fei no longer paid attention to the Cloud Sky City Lord and the others. He turned around and walked back into the main hall. If there is nothing special, don't disturb me. As the door closed, Gu Fei's voice could be heard. Yes, Brother Fei. Yang Zhan quickly said. The iron-armored Flaming Bull King also let out a low roar and looked at the gate with its big red eyes in awe. At this time, countless young disciples of the Cloud Sky City who were participating in the Yingtian sect's entrance trial were walking on the streets. In less than 2 hours, they would be returning to the ancestral world. Everyone was very excited because once they returned to the Yingtian sect, they would be able to enter the Yingtian sect to cultivate. Although the ancestral mountain courtyard was the weakest courtyard among the 36 courtyards of the Yingtian sect, as long as they could enter the ancestral god courtyard, they would have a chance to become famous. After all, They were disciples of the Ying sect. For ordinary cultivators, this was definitely a step to the heavens. However, at this time, a scream suddenly came from the north gate of the city. There was a commotion on the street as the young cultivators were all hiding from something. A person fell to the ground with a small black arrow stuck between his eyebrows. The place where the arrow hit was oozing black blood. Unexpectedly, someone had killed someone on the street just as they were about to leave the training ground. At this time, a group of soldiers led by a general rushed over and dispersed the crowd. Poison arrow? The general was a middle-aged man at the peak of the post-liminary realm. He squatted down and carefully examined the young cultivator on the ground. No one would kill someone for no reason, and no one would be killed for no reason. The murderer must have hidden himself and could not be found in a short period of time. The general of the Cloud Sky City immediately ordered people to carry the corpse away and left. It seems like Chun Mu from the Chun clan was killed. Could it be the Qin clan's archenemy, the Bull clan? The enmity between these two families runs very deep. They have been fighting for hundreds of years. The surrounding cultivators were all discussing. In these less than 2 hours, everyone felt insecure. It was definitely not a good thing to be targeted by an enemy when they offended someone. Soon, another scream was heard from another place in the Sky Market City. The people nearby quickly rushed over, only to see a person lying in a pool of blood in a small alley. He had long since died. Another person was killed. Many people chose to kill the descendants or disciples of their enemies at this time. These people did not want to see their enemies enter the Ying sect and become its disciples. The soldiers and generals in Cloudy Sky City turned a blind eye to this situation. In less than an hour, hundreds of people had been killed in the Cloud Heaven City. These people naturally died with grievances. Just as they were about to leave the trial, they were killed by someone. Many unlucky fellows died with their eyes wide open. These bastards! Yang Zhan was shocked to see the trial takers in the city killing each other. Did he have to kill the disciples of the Lei clan and the Feng clan? Lei Run, give me your life. At this time, in a small alley, Wang Long held a spear and forced a young cultivator into a corner. Wang Long, you want to kill me? The young cultivator was Lei Run, a disciple of the Lei clan. Lei Dong was not the only disciple of the Lei clan who came to participate in the trial. Hee, who will know if I kill you? Wang Long stared at Lei Run with a murderous look. There were people in the Lei clan who had become a true disciple of the Ying sect. This made many people not dare to attack the disciples of the Lei clan who participated in the trial. However, Wang Long had no choice but to kill this guy. This was because Lei Run had tried to kill him just now. If he was not lucky, he would have died in Lei Ren's hands. You! Lei Ren's forehead was sweating. Go to hell. Wang Long could not be bothered to talk nonsense with this guy. The spear in his hand pierced towards Lei Run. The spearhead turned into a cold light and flew towards Lei Ren's eyebrows. Wang Long was a half-step too inborn. When the spear pierced out, there was an explosion in the air. Lei Run was taken aback and quickly dodged. The spearhead in Wang Long's hand brushed past Lei Ren's forehead. A strand of hair fell from the air. Lei Ren reached out and touched it. When he looked down, he saw that his hand was covered in blood. There was a sharp pain on his forehead and a bloody scar had appeared. Swoosh! Lei Run did not dare to fight anymore. He flew into the sky and tried to escape. Humph! Wang Long sneered. The spear in his hand seemed to have turned into a black dragon. It instantly caught up to Lei Run and nailed him to death in the void. At this time, there were shadows flashing nearby. Someone had noticed something strange in the alley and was approaching it quickly. Wang Long quickly withdrew the spear in his hand. Before Lei Ren's body fell to the ground, he had already rushed out of the alley and disappeared quickly. He did not even take Lei Ren's storage bag. Just as Wang Long left, a black shadow appeared in the alley. Lei Ren? Dead? This person was tall and skinny. It's almost time. Have you made up your mind? Gu Fei said as he looked at the Yuntian City Lord and his family. The Yuntian City Lord hesitated for a moment before he took out a wooden box from his storage bag and handed it to Gu Fei. Yang Zhan quickly took the wooden box and handed it to Gu Fei. Gu Fei was a little curious. There was an unusual aura coming from the wooden box. Could there be some kind of heaven-defying treasure in this inferior world? The laws of heaven and earth in this inferior world were too incomplete, and the spiritual energy was too thin. It was impossible for a heaven-defying immortal treasure to be born. He took the wooden box and directly opened it. At this moment, the Yuntian city lord and the others looked at Gu Fei nervously. This was a moment that concerned the fate of their family. Gu Fei looked at the wooden box in his hand and saw a fist-sized wooden bead inside. The unusual aura was coming from the wooden bead. How could there be such a thing in this inferior world? Gu Fei was really moved because this ordinary-looking wooden bead was actually an extraordinary item. It was a sovereign inner core of an extreme Tao sovereign. This was a sovereign inner core left behind by a divine tree of extreme Tao. It could be called an ancestral core. There seemed to be naturally formed patterns on the wooden bead. A very weak aura of the extreme Tao principle spread out from the wooden bead. The extreme Tao essence inside the wooden bead had almost completely disappeared. Otherwise, the Yuntian city lord would not have been able to obtain this wooden bead. The power of the extreme Tao was too strong. Just a strand of the power of the extreme Tao could crush everything and cause terrifying destruction. In this inferior world, if a true power of the extreme Tao appeared here, the entire inferior world would probably collapse. Although the extreme Tao essence inside the wooden bead had almost completely disappeared, there was still an extremely weak aura of life hidden inside the wooden bead. The wooden bead still had vitality. In fact, this wooden bead was also the seed of the divine tree of extreme Tao. As long as there was enough essence qi, it could regain its vitality and germinate. Gu Fei was very curious about what kind of tree this wooden bead belonged to. "All right, I'll take it," Gu Fei said calmly. He then put the wooden bead back into the wooden box and kept it in his inner world. The Yuntian city lord was overjoyed. You're willing to take us out of here?" The Yuntian city lord asked with a trembling voice. He was very excited. Gu Fei nodded. Hearing this, the Yuntian city lord and the others were ecstatic. "All of you, go pack up everything," the Yuntian city lord said to Yun Shi and Yun Ao. "Yes, father." Yun Shi and Yun Ao quickly rushed out and disappeared behind the city lord's palace. Just as Yun Shi and Yun Ao left, the sky above Yuntian city suddenly shook. In the next moment, a giant whirlpool appeared in the sky. At this moment, everyone looked up at the giant whirlpool in the sky in shock. Rumble. Waves of shocking noises came down from the sky. Soon, an immortal light rushed out of the whirlpool and lit up the sky. The cultivators who were illuminated by the immortal light turned into immortal light that shot into the sky and disappeared into the whirlpool. These cultivators who disappeared into the whirlpool were the young cultivators who were participating in the Yingtian sect's entrance trial. Rays of immortal light shot into the sky from Yuntian City. The scene was so spectacular that the native cultivators in Yuntian City were dumbfounded. "It's time." Gu Fei raised his head and looked at the huge whirlpool that enveloped the entire sky with a calm expression. He could do this too. The guys from the Yingtian sect had left some kind of immortal mark on the cultivators. Once the time was up, the experts from the Yingtian sect in the primogenitor realm would use a great technique to summon the living cultivators back. Chapter 37:14. In the Yingtian sect, the primogenitor mountain courtyard was divided into two parts, the ground and the sky. A sacred mountain that seemed to have existed since ancient times floated in the sky. This was the upper courtyard of the primogenitor mountain courtyard, while the ground was the lower courtyard. The lower courtyard was where the true disciples and the new azure-robed disciples cultivated. As for the upper courtyard, it was where the elders and hall masters cultivated. Only the disciples of the elders and summoned disciples could enter the upper courtyard. In the square of the lower courtyard, 9 ancient stone doors were slowly opening. Ancient immortal runes began to appear on the stone doors, emitting powerful immortal light. To mortals, this was definitely a legendary immortal, but to the immortals of the Yingtian sect, it was nothing out of the ordinary. As the 9 stone doors opened, the immortal light from the 9 stone doors formed a huge vortex in the sky above the square. Soon, rays of immortal light rushed out of the vortex and landed on the square. The immortal light dissipated, revealing many figures. These people were looking around blankly. They were the young cultivators who had come out of the trial to participate in the Ing Tian sect's entrance trial. "I'm back. Haha, I'm back." Many people shouted excitedly, some even wept bitterly. It really wasn't easy to make it back here. It could be said that it was a narrow escape from death. Those who could make it back here were all very lucky. As the rays of immortal light descended from the sky, the entire square was soon filled with people. Everyone felt as if they had just escaped death. However, there were some exceptions. An immortal light larger than the average one fell from the sky, and two figures fell directly to the ground. The two guys hugged each other tightly, their bodies covered in blood. The two guys twitched a few times, and then there was no more sound. The surrounding people were shocked and quickly dodged to the side. "Perishing together. Awesome," someone exclaimed. The two of them fought with their lives at the last moment. They couldn't help but admire them. Just how much hatred did these two guys have between them? Everyone looked at this scene in shock. At this time, another huge ray of immortal light rushed out of the vortex in the sky and landed on the ground. The immortal light dissipated, and three figures appeared in front of everyone. In the next moment, the three of them didn't even look at where they were before they roared and started fighting each other. Outside the Ing Tian Courtyard's plaza, there were many white-robed disciples of the Ing Tian sect. These were all true disciples, but these people completely ignored the three guys fighting. Soon, a black-clothed young man killed the two young men who had besieged him on the spot. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were stunned. This black-robed youth was very strong. Baleful energy curled around his body. His hair was still dripping with blood, and his body was stained with blood. Although he killed the two cultivators, he was also injured quite badly. Buzz! The void trembled, and the vortex of immortal light that enveloped the entire square continued to spin. Beams of immortal light continued to descend from the sky, and there were even corpses falling out of the immortal light. The brutal killing continued in Cloudy Sky City. The disciples of the opposing factions all wanted to kill off their enemies before leaving the trial grounds. In the trial grounds, Cloudy Sky City could be said to have set off a bloody storm. Countless cultivators died. Even if some entered the immortal light, they were still shot down by an arrow. Everyone went crazy, and their eyes were bloodshot. This caused the natives in Cloudy Sky City to be inexplicably shocked. Were these guys crazy? Why were they killing each other? Outside the Primogenitor Mountain, there were more or less some conflicts between the major clans. Some were even mortal enemies with irreconcilable hatred. Taking advantage of this opportunity, many people wanted to settle old and new grudges at the same time. Brother Fei this. In the open space in front of the City Lord Palace, Yang Zhan looked at Gu Fei and wanted to say something. Everyone has their own fate. Let them be. Gu Fei looked at the scene outside the City Lord Palace indifferently. He would not interfere because all of this was brought upon by those guys outside. At this time, a beam of immortal light descended from the sky and instantly enveloped Yang Zhan. The City Lord and the others were shocked. In the next moment, Yang Zhan shot up into the sky under their shocked gazes. Shit! Yang Zhan only had time to roar before he instantly disappeared into the whirlpool in the sky. At this time, almost all the cultivators in Cloudy Sky City had left. At this time, a beam of immortal light fell towards Gu Fei. Brother Gu. Seeing this, the City Lord could not help but be shocked and hurriedly shouted. It should be noted that once Gu Fei was enveloped by the immortal light, he would instantly disappear. Seeing the immortal light rushing towards Gu Fei, the City Lord and the others immediately became anxious. At this time, Gu Fei waved his hand and directly put the City Lord into his inner world. Moo! The iron-armored Fire Ox Emperor could not sit still anymore and directly lay down at Gu Fei's feet. Gu Fei glanced at the Beast Emperor and then also waved his hand to put the Beast Emperor into his inner world. The immortal light fell and instantly enveloped Gu Fei. In the next moment, Gu Fei was bathed in the immortal light and shot up into the sky. In an instant, he rushed into the whirlpool in the sky and instantly disappeared. Gu Fei passed through the barrier between heaven and earth and soon, He felt the aura of the primogenitor's realm. Swoosh! The immortal light dissipated and Gu Fei looked around. He saw that he was already standing on the square of Ingtian side courtyard, and the surrounding cultivators were looking at him. Brother Fei. At this time, a guy ran over. This guy was Yang Zhan. Being able to get close to a big tree like Gu Fei was definitely the best decision he had ever made in his life. On the square, Wang Long and Feng Yu also saw Gu Fei, and their expressions were somewhat complicated. Many cultivators did not know how powerful Gu Fei was, but they were very clear that this Gu Fei was incredible as he could compete with an immortal god. Even if this Gu Fei was not an immortal god, he was most likely already a half-step immortal god. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to subdue that iron-armored fire ox emperor. There were still quite a number of people who could return to Ingtian side courtyard from the trial ground. There were more than 100,000 cultivators who entered the trial ground, but now there were less than 10,000 left. Those who couldn't come out from the trial ground had already perished inside. Among the less than 10,000 cultivators on the square, a large number of them were seriously injured during the trial. There were also many who had broken limbs. Ling Feng was also on the square, looking at Gu Fei and Yang Zhan with a complicated expression. He was filled with regret. If it wasn't because he was afraid of offending the Thunder Clan and Feng Clan with Gu Fei, he would not have ended up in such a miserable state. With a crippled leg, he, Ling Feng, had completely lost the qualification to enter Ingtian side courtyard. In this way, another group of people were directly swept away. There were only 1,208 people who were truly qualified to enter Ingtian side courtyard. This was the cruel reality of Ingtian side courtyard. Chapter 37:15. Ing Tianzong's entrance trial was too cruel. In the end, even though close to 10,000 people came out of the trial, there were only 1,208 people who passed the trial. Out of the 100,000 young cultivators that participated in the trial, only 1,208 people had the qualifications to enter Ingtian sect. This result shocked everyone. This was the cruelty of reality. Those that failed the trial left, some even died, while those that succeeded stayed. Those young cultivators that were injured in the trial, after being treated by the people of Ingtian sect, also left. Only 1,208 people stayed to accept the next stage of the competition. This competition would determine who had the qualifications to become a true disciple of Ingtian sect. And most importantly, this was also a good day for the elders of Ingtian sect to accept disciples. If anyone was chosen by the elders of Ingtian sect during the competition and was accepted as a disciple, then that was truly reaching the heavens in a single step. The status of an elder disciple in Ingtian sect was much higher than that of a normal true disciple. This competition was set for half a month later. The cultivators had just returned from the trial and needed to rest and adjust their condition. Gu Fei returned to his residence. At this time, it was already difficult to see the scene of people moving around. It had to be known that the 100,000 people that participated in the trial were almost completely annihilated. Of course, those that survived and returned to the primogenitor's realm definitely had their own strengths. What? My little brother died. At this time, in Lei Zhan's residence, in the living room of the lower courtyard, Lei Zhan was angrily glaring at another disciple of the Thunder Clan. Under Lei Zhan's gaze, this Thunder Clan disciple trembled in fear. Sir, it was that person called Yang Zhan who ordered the Beast King to kill your little brother. The Thunder Clan disciple lied on the ground as he trembled. Yang Zhan, I want you to accompany me in death, Lei Zhan said through gritted teeth. His eyes revealed a fiendish aura. He wanted to kill someone. He only had one little brother, yet he was killed. How could he accept this? As night fell, the area around Gu Fei and Yang Zhan's residence was very quiet. At Gu Fei's level of cultivation, it didn't matter if he didn't eat or drink, but Yang Zhan couldn't. He wasn't an immortal god. He was just a small cultivator in the Xiantian realm. He still needed to eat. Yang Zhan immediately started a bonfire. Then, he took out some of the beast meat he had obtained from the trial grounds and roasted it over the fire. Soon, the fragrance of meat filled the air. Gu Fei and Yang Zhan sat by the fire, drinking wine while eating meat, enjoying themselves. However, right at this moment, a black shadow suddenly descended from the sky, grabbed Yang Zhan, and soared into the sky, disappearing into the darkness. Oomph! Gu Fei smiled. In the next moment, he stood up, took a step forward, and instantly disappeared on the spot. In the back mountain of Yingtian Courtyard's lower courtyard, in a remote forest, the black-robed man directly threw Yang Zhan to the ground. Moreover, he didn't seal Yang Zhan's cultivation. Who are you? Why do you want to capture me? Yang Zhan stared at the black-robed man and asked in a low voice. The black-robed man didn't say anything. He directly sent a palm towards Yang Zhan. The violent palm energy spread out, shattering the surrounding trees. Yang Zhan felt like he was about to suffocate. He wanted to dodge, but he found that he couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch helplessly as the black-robed man's palm bombarded towards him. In his eyes, the palm was rapidly enlarging. My life is over. Yang Zhan's extreme joy turned to sorrow. He had just obtained the qualifications to entering Tian's sect, but he was about to die. He was very unwilling. In fact, Yang Zhan didn't expect that there would be someone who dared to attack him in Yingtian Courtyard. This was simply not putting Yingtian Courtyard in their eyes. Bang! Just as Yang Zhan closed his eyes and waited for death, he heard a muffled sound of impact. In the next moment, he felt himself being sent flying backwards. Some people were surprised that someone actually dared to jump out to save this guy. All of you, die for me. The black-robed man waved his hands, and golden threads that were almost tangible rushed out from his hands. In an instant, they interweaved into a golden net that enveloped the two of them. The person who had saved Yang Zhan was Gu Fei. He saw that wherever the golden net passed, the trees were cut into countless pieces, and the net enveloped him from above. Gu Fei smiled and waved his right hand. A divine light rushed out from his finger like a divine whip and fiercely lashed at the golden net that was enveloping them. This strike actually split the entire golden net in the middle, leaving behind a bunch of rotten things. What? At this moment, the black-robed man couldn't help but be shocked. The opponent's strength far exceeded his expectations. And at the same time that the black-robed man was shocked, Gu Fei silently appeared in front of the black-robed man. With a stretch of his hand, he tore off the black-robed man's mask. It's you? Yang Zhan saw the person and immediately cried out in surprise. Lei Jin? Gu Fei was also very surprised. After returning to Yingtian's side courtyard, he sealed his cultivation. Right now, he was only in the realm of immortals. From Lei Jin's point of view, Gu Fei was not an immortal. However, he was able to block his attack and easily tear off his mask. He was completely dumbfounded. Swoosh! Lei Jin retreated with extreme speed. Chapter 37:16. Brother Fei, you killed Lei Jin? Yang Zhan was still dumbfounded after returning to his residence. He was so shocked that he couldn't even speak properly. That scene just now almost made him pee his pants. Gu Fei quietly released his divine sense and instantly enveloped the entire lower courtyard of Yingtian Courtyard. So be it. Is there a problem? Gu Fei said calmly. He had merely killed an immortal-level little fellow. To him, it was as easy as crushing an ant. He needed a place to settle down in the ancestral realm. Unfortunately, he had his eyes on Yingtian's sect. Ancestor Yingtian was a quasi-supreme. Only by knowing where he was could he kill him and replace him to successfully control the entire Yingtian sect. Gu Fei actually enjoyed all of this. It reminded him of his experience in the Taishan sect in the human world before he achieved the Tao. This made Gu Fei feel like he was going back in time. What do we do? What do we do? If someone finds out, we'll die without a burial place. Yang Zhan was truly frightened. Gu Fei glanced at him and said calmly, What are you panicking about? Didn't I just kill an immortal? It's not the end of the world. So what if it is? He didn't care at all. But now, Gu Fei still had to endure. The ancestral realm was the origin of myriad realms. The laws of heaven and earth were perfect to the extreme. The myriad realms couldn't compare to the ancestral realm. This was the most ideal place to undergo a tribulation, especially an extreme heavenly tribulation. If Gu Fei could successfully break through to the extreme realm here and become an extreme supreme, he would definitely be much stronger than the other supreme realms. However, there was no heavenly punishment here. There were supremes in the ancestral realm, and quite a few of them. Even Gu Fei didn't dare to be too aggressive. If he was targeted by an extreme supreme, the consequences would be unthinkable. Gu Fei had offended many extreme supremes in the ancestral realm. The moment he showed himself, he would probably be discovered by these enemies, and then it would be a tragedy. An immortal. Brother Fei, you killed an immortal, and it was Lei Zhan. Yang Zhan was still restless and terrified. Wait, Brother Fei, if you can kill an immortal, doesn't that mean you're even stronger than an immortal? Yang Zhan suddenly looked at Gu Fei as if he was looking at a monster. Although Gu Fei had a confrontation with the immortal city lord in Yuntian City, he didn't do much so no one knew how strong he was. However, even the golden immortal city lord was respectful towards Gu Fei. This meant that Gu Fei was even stronger than a golden immortal. All right, if I say it's fine, then it's fine. No one will come looking for trouble with you. If it weren't for me just now, you would have been killed by Lei Zhan. After saying that, Gu Fei sat cross-legged on the bed and closed his eyes, ignoring Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan didn't sleep at all. He spent the entire night in fear. However, just as Gu Fei had said, no one came to trouble him. Yang Zhan didn't know that the primogenitor mountainside courtyard was in an uproar that night. Someone had snuck into the lower courtyard and killed an immortal true disciple. How could this be? Even the courtyard lord was alarmed. That night, all the elders of the side courtyard were mobilized in an attempt to find the intruder. However, their efforts were in vain. The intruder didn't leave behind any traces after killing the disciple. For the 1,208 young cultivators who had just passed the entrance trial, they could not sense what was happening outside at all. Only Gu Fei could sense all of this. The hall master of the primogenitor mountain monastery was only a saint king. Even if Gu Fei sealed his cultivation, the hall master wouldn't be able to sense his existence. The courtyard lord personally watched over the side courtyard's divine mountain. When it was almost daybreak, all the elders who had gone out to chase the enemy returned to the main hall at the top of the mountain. The courtyard lord sat on his throne, looking down at the 12 elders below. Courtyard lord, we didn't find anything. A white-haired, white-clothed old man, who was the leader of the 12 elders, said to the dean on the throne. What? The courtyard lord was shocked. How is this possible? Who could sneak into the side courtyard and kill a disciple of the Yingtian sect without anyone noticing, and then escape unscathed? Could it be that the person who killed Lei Ting is still hiding within the monastery's gates? A middle-aged elder said in a low voice. No way. The other elders in the main hall were shocked. If that was really the case, then the murderer was too bold. Activate the formation and seal off the side courtyard. The courtyard lord said. Yes. The 12 elders hurriedly accepted the order and left the main hall. Very soon, an extremely powerful force of the immortal Tao erupted from the peak of the Upper Academy Divine Mountain, instantly enveloping a radius of several thousand kilometers. In the void, a layer of immortal light was faintly discernible. However, after a while, the layer of immortal light disappeared into the void, as if it had never been there. They actually activated the Guardian Array? Is there a need for such a grand formation? Gu Fei was sitting on the bed in his residence. He was speechless when he sensed all this. Didn't they just kill an immortal? This was something that Gu Fei would never have thought that the entire courtyard of Yingtian sect would be in a state of panic. Why do I care so much? Gu Fei didn't care. He still sat on his bed, unmoving. Dong. The melodious sound of a bell rang in the morning, spreading throughout the Yingtian sect. At this time, a disciple in green from the Yingtian sect shouted from outside. Come out, all of you. What are you so slow for? Hurry up. The disciples in green were arrogant, but the young cultivators who had just passed the trial didn't dare say anything. They didn't dare offend these disciples. In the Yingtian sect, the disciples of the Yingtian sect were clearly divided. The disciples in green were of the lowest status. To put it nicely, they were disciples, but to put it bluntly, they were servants. Above the disciples in green were the true disciples, the elders' disciples, and above the elders' disciples were the courtyard lord's disciples. Of course, It had been many years since the hall master had accepted a disciple. Within the Ingtian monastery, the hall master had very few personal disciples. There were only 7, but those 7 were incomparably powerful. The eldest disciple's cultivation base could even contend against some of the elders. Hurry up and come out. Eat and drink to your heart's content, then gather at the plaza. The disciples in green kept shouting. Gu Fei's mind moved, and the scene outside immediately reflected in his mind. He saw a dozen disciples in green pushing huge wooden buckets outside, shouting. These buckets were pushed by wooden carts, and inside were buns and porridge. The buns were red, and the porridge was dark green. What surprised Gu Fei was that these buns and green porridge were imbued with spiritual energy. Although the spiritual energy was very weak, for cultivators, eating these things often could slowly change their physique. At this time, many cultivators came out, and some were already wolfing down the food. Chapter 37:17. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Ing Tianzong's food was pretty good. Even the food for the trial takers contained spiritual energy. The ancestral realm was worthy of its name. If this was the mortal world, perhaps only the core disciples of the great sects and great clans could enjoy this kind of food. The primogeniture realm's spiritual energy was the densest out of all the places Gu Fei had ever seen. Even if the people here didn't cultivate, they could still live up to 100 or 200 years old. The lifespan of cultivators was very long. It should be known that under the nourishment of spiritual energy, even a blade of grass could transform into a spiritual medicine. Soon, everyone was full, and then they walked towards the square. Gu Fei and Yang Zhan also arrived at the square. In the center of the square, there was actually a 3 zhang tall platform, and above the square, there was a cloud of qi. On top of the clouds sat 12 immortals in purple feather robes. These immortals were high up in the sky, surrounded by immortal light as if they had merged with the great Tao of heaven and earth. They were the 12th elder of the Ingtian courtyard. Even though the 12th elder was just sitting on the cloud and did not exude any immortal might, everyone was still very cautious in front of him, not daring to be careless. At this time, the challengers in the plaza were already stunned by the immortal atmosphere of Ingtian courtyard. The trial takers were all ordinary people, and the highest cultivation level among them was only a half-step immortal. When had they ever seen such a scene? At this moment, a figure directly leaped down from the divine mountain high up in the sky. He stepped on a rainbow-colored immortal cloud and landed on the high platform at the center of the square. Greetings, eldest senior brother. All the white-robed disciples in the square bowed towards the figure on the high platform. Love, Go, Small, Say, Netku. Even the 12th elder, who was squatting on the cloud, stood up. Junior brothers, there's no need to be so polite. The young white-robed immortal on the high platform said with a smile. The cultivators in the square were dumbfounded. New junior brothers and sisters, I am your eldest senior brother, Shangguan Feixiong. Next will be your second trial. More accurately, it will be an arena competition. In this competition, the top 12 will be able to become an elder's disciple. Below the top 12, but above the top 200, will be able to become a true disciple. However, I have a piece of bad news for you. Among the green-robed disciples in the monastery, all disciples below the immortal god realm can participate in the competition. Shangguan Feixiong said. What? As soon as Shangguan Feixiong's words fell, the trial takers in the plaza went into an uproar. Eldest senior brother, this is very unfair to us. Someone shouted at Shangguan Feixiong. That's right. Those green-robed senior brothers have been cultivating in the sect for so long. How could we possibly be their match? A fat cultivator said. Shangguan Feixiong was still smiling as he looked at the trial takers below the stage. As long as you guys are outstanding enough, even those green-robed junior brothers who entered the sect earlier than you won't be your match. Unless you're not stunning enough. Shangguan Feixiong continued. Everyone was speechless. All right, now let's talk about the rules of the competition. Shangguan Feixiong intentionally paused for a moment. Everyone's ears pricked up. What I want to say is, the rules of the competition are that there are no rules. You will fight until you can no longer fight. Not only will you win, but you will also die. This will also give you a chance to settle your grudges. As Shangguan Feixiong spoke, his expression gradually became solemn. In the cultivation world, the strong preyed on the weak. Although Ing Tian sect's method of selecting disciples was cruel, it was also the most effective. Everyone was listening quietly. All right, I hereby announce the start of the competition. After saying that, Shangguan Feixiong soared into the sky and arrived in front of the 12th elder. He bowed to the 12th elder and sat down below him. This Shangguan Feixiong was the eldest disciple of the Hall Master, and also the eldest senior brother of Yingtian Courtyard. His cultivation and battle prowess were comparable to some of the 12 elders. At this moment, everyone below the stage stared at each other, and no one went up. One must know that this was a duel of life and death without any rules. The loser would either be injured or die. Haha, a bunch of cowards. If you don't go up, then I will. Right at this moment, a burst of laughter resounded, and then waves of tremors came from the ground as a figure the size of a small mountain charged towards the arena. After that, it leaped up and descended onto the arena with a bang, causing the entire arena to shake violently. Everyone was dumbfounded. They saw that the guy who jumped onto the stage was actually a big fatty dressed in green clothes. Isn't this the fatty who cooks in the workshop? A disciple in green recognized the fatty. It's this fatty. He can really eat. He seems to have put on a lot of weight. Someone ridiculed. Even the people from the workshop are here to participate in the written test? Many people were surprised. A bunch of cowards. Do you dare to spar with me? The fatty glanced at the crowd below the stage and said disdainfully. As soon as the fatty finished speaking, a figure rushed onto the stage. It was a young disciple who was participating in the written test. Yang Zhan happened to know him. He was a disciple of the Thunder Clan. Come. If you have any skills, then use them. Otherwise, you won't have a chance. Fatty waved his hand at the man and said, "Humph." The disciple from the Thunder Clan moved and immediately disappeared. In the next moment, his figure appeared above the fatty's head, and his foot stomped down on the fatty's head. This was a secret technique of the Thunder Clan called Lightning Force. This secret technique could instantly increase a person's speed to the limit, allowing them to burst out with the fastest speed possible. The fatty suddenly grinned. His right hand reached up and grabbed the sole of the Thunder Clan disciple's foot. What? The Thunder Clan disciple was shocked. His left foot also came down on the fatty's head. However, what caused the disciple to collapse was that his left foot was also caught by the fatty. In the next moment, the fatty swung the Thunder Clan disciple around and ruthlessly smashed him onto the stage. With just one smash, the Thunder Clan disciple spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. A piece of trash. Fatty threw the disciple of the Thunder Clan out of the arena as if he was a ragged sack. Although the fatty didn't kill anyone, the Thunder Clan disciple was already half dead. He would need to recuperate for a period of time before he could recover. Who else is there? Come up here for me. Don't be afraid. I won't beat you to death. The fatty said to the crowd below the stage. The crowd was incomparably shocked. The combat strength displayed by the fatty was too strong. It was definitely above the Xiantian realm. Who would dare to challenge this guy? How could they live? Chapter 37:18. Genius 1 second. Remember love go away? To provide you with wonderful novels to read. Many people were frightened by the fact that there were no rules to the battle. Victory and defeat were decided, and life and death were also decided. In other words, there would be people who would die. More than 1,000 cultivators had passed the trial with great difficulty. Who would want to go up and die? However, many people were unwilling. If they didn't go up and display their amazing cultivation and talent, they wouldn't be able to attract the attention of the 12 elders. If they wanted to become an elder disciple of the primogeniture mountain courtyard, one of the 36 courtyards, they had to go up to the arena. However, the most terrible thing was that the green-robed disciples of the Yingtian courtyard were also qualified to go up to the arena. This made this batch of cultivators feel that it was very unfair. 10 years was a very long time for mortals. Those green-robed disciples of the Yingtian courtyard had cultivated for 10 years. Even if they weren't immortals, they were almost there. Who would dare to say that they could win against these green-robed disciples? What, are you all cowards? If you're not a coward, then come up here. At this time, the fatty on the arena shouted to everyone below the stage. Too arrogant. This batch of cultivators were very unhappy. They wished they could throw that fat pig off the arena. However, they had learned their lesson. That unlucky guy from the Thunder Clan was still unconscious. Yang Zhan was also very angry seeing this scene. What? You want to go up and teach that guy a lesson? Gu Fei crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the fatty on the arena. Although this fatty looked very strong, he was only at the mid-level Xiantian realm. However, this fatty's fat was very shocking. His ability to resist attacks was absolutely amazing. An ordinary Xiantian cultivator would find it difficult to win against this guy unless they used a weapon. However, not everyone could have a spiritual weapon. Yang Zhan had a spiritual weapon. Wang Long also had one. Ling Feng was crippled and had been eliminated. It was hard to say whether he could return to his clan or not. This batch of disciples doesn't seem to be very good. A purple-robed elder sitting high above the clouds shook his head and said, "It's still too early to say that." The great elder said indifferently, "Senior brother is right." The elder hurriedly said, "The monastery's 12 elders would accept disciples once every 10 years. But only the top 12 disciples from the unruly competition would have a chance to become an elder's disciple. It was just a chance. If the 12 elders didn't like the 12 disciples who won, they could choose not to accept disciples. So, whether or not they accepted disciples depended on the mood of the 12 elders. The great elder had the fewest disciples. He only had 9, 2 more than the hall master. And the one with the most disciples was the 12 elders, with a total of 32 disciples. Love, go small, say, Netka having many disciples was useless, as the hall master only had 7 disciples. On the other hand, Shangguan Feixiong alone was enough to sweep through all of the elders' disciples. At this time, the eldest senior brother, Shangguan Feixiong, who was sitting right below the 12th elder, looked at the new disciples on the square with a smile on his face. There were still a few good seedlings among this batch of new disciples. "I'll fight you." Just at this moment, a loud shout rang out from the square. A figure soared into the sky and landed on the martial stage. He then walked over to the fatty. This was a cultivator who looked like a 7- or 8-year-old child. But none of the cultivators on the square dared to look down on him. That was because this childlike cultivator had an incomparably domineering nickname, Little Overlord. He actually couldn't control his temper. Gu Fei couldn't help feeling a bit surprised when he saw that person. Was Feng Yu impulsive? That shouldn't be the case. That fellow had people in the Yingtian monastery. Back when he had first entered the Yingtian monastery, Gu Fei had sensed that Feng Yu was together with a Saint King. That Saint King was currently sitting on a cloud in the sky. The Wind Clan's foundation was truly deep. Of course, Gu Fei didn't place the Wind Clan in his eyes. Hee, little fellow, I think you should go down. Otherwise, if I accidentally beat you to death, that wouldn't be good. The fatty grinned. Feng Yu revealed a trace of disdain when he heard that. With just you? You want to beat me to death? Come and try. Feng Yu waved his hand at the fatty with a disapproving expression. You're courting death. Feng Yu's disdainful gaze deeply hurt the fatty. Both of the fatty's legs pushed against the ground, causing the entire martial stage to shake. In the next moment, his entire body leaped up from the ground like a huge ball and directly smashed towards Feng Yu. No way. Seeing this scene, everyone below the martial stage was indescribably shocked. This fatty's attack was truly too strange. Could it be that he wanted to use his huge body to smash Feng Yu to death? Feng Yu stared at the fatty who was smashing down from the sky. The corner of his mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a cold smile. In the next moment, his hands danced and transparent wind blades immediately rushed out from his hands. Although the wind blades were invisible, when they moved quickly in the void, they emitted a faint sound of breaking through the air. This is, as the saying goes, once an expert makes a move, one will know whether or not he is an expert. Feng Yu's move immediately shocked the fatty. The fatty's clothes were instantly cut by the wind blades. When the wind blades landed on the fatty's body, it was as if they were chopping cotton. All of the wind blades were bounced off, unable to harm him at all. In the next moment, Feng Yu disappeared on the spot like a gust of wind, without a trace. Boom! The fatty directly smashed into the martial stage, causing the entire martial stage to shake. If it wasn't for the immortal force supporting it, this martial stage would have collapsed. Storm Fist. Feng Yu's figure appeared in the sky above the fatty. In the next moment, countless fists rained down on the fatty like a violent storm. Haha, come on. The fatty laughed heartily. In the next moment, countless fists instantly smashed onto the fatty's body. Fist marks immediately appeared on the fatty's body, and these fist marks directly sank into the fatty's body. However, in the next moment, these fist marks disappeared and the collapsed fatty's body bounced back. Countless violent fists smashed onto the fatty's body, but it actually felt like they were scratching an itch. Seeing this scene, everyone below the stage was indescribably shocked. This fatty is abnormal. Little fella, did you not drink your milk? Go back and drink your milk before coming back. As the fatty spoke loudly, he directly stretched out his hand and grabbed towards Feng Yu. Wind tornado. Feng Yu's body swayed and an extremely strong gust of wind immediately gushed out from his body, forming a whirlpool that enveloped the fatty. The strong wind formed a tornado and the fatty's cumbersome body actually staggered because of the wind. In the next moment, the wind suddenly increased and the fatty was directly swept up into the sky. Chapter 37:19. Genius in a Second. Remember Love Go Away? The internet provides you with exciting novels to read. Feng Yu made his move. The combat techniques of the Feng clan were incomparably strong. A huge tornado appeared on the arena, sending the fatty flying into the air. There was no suspense in this battle. One should know that Feng Yu was an expert who had surpassed the inborn realm. In the next moment, the fatty's huge body flew out like a huge meatball. He landed on the ground and bounced a few times before standing firmly on the ground. What a meatball! Everyone in the square was secretly astonished when they saw this. The people who came out of the workshop were really extraordinary. At this time, the fatty stared at the figure on the arena. He was unwilling, but more than that, he felt helpless. He couldn't even defeat a kid. He had lived all these years in vain. Junior brother fatty, you'd better stay in the workshop obediently. There's good food and a good place to live. We're all very envious of you. Haha. Someone mocked the fatty. Lin Xian, if you're capable, come up the arena. If you're not, then don't squabble here. The fatty stared at the disciple in green who mocked him and said angrily, I'll go up then. So what? The disciple in green said as he leaped up and landed on the arena. Little brat, it's not too late for you to jump off the arena now. If I make a move, you'll be in deep trouble. The disciple in green named Lin Xian smiled evilly and stared at Feng Yu. Feng Yu smiled and didn't say a word. However, he stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at the disciple in green. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless, Lin Xian said coldly. In the next moment, he moved, leaving an afterimage on the spot. In an instant, he appeared in front of Feng Yu and threw a punch at Feng Yu's face. So fast, the spectators below the arena were shocked. The moment Lin Xian punched out, there was a loud piercing sound in the air. The speed and strength of his physical body had broken through the limits of the post-celestial stage and even the post-celestial stage. An expert who has surpassed the inborn realm? Below the arena, Yang Zhan's eyes narrowed when he saw this. Looks like you'd better not go up, Gu Fei said. Among the green-robed disciples of Yingtian Courtyard, there were many who were stronger than Yang Zhan. Some of these green-robed disciples even had one foot in the immortal god realm. Given Yang Zhan's current cultivation base, it was impossible for him to defeat these half-step immortals unless he helped him. I can't accept it. Yang Zhan clenched his fists as he stared at the two rapidly moving figures on the stage. Feng Yu and Lin Xian began to fight on the stage. Powerful qi exploded on the stage and dense sounds of collisions kept ringing out. Powerful energy ripples spread out, creating a strong wind around the stage. Third brother, your Feng clan has produced a good seedling. A white-bearded elder sitting high above the clouds said to a white-haired elder beside him. Feng Yu is a good kid. the old man said proudly. Shangguan Feixiang, who was sitting beside the 12th elder, smiled and did not say anything. The third elder, Feng Feiyang, had a powerful cultivation and was a saint king. In the past 60 years, the Feng clan had not produced any outstanding figures. This made Feng Feiyang lose face, but the appearance of Feng Yu was a pleasant surprise. Congratulations, third elder, the other elders said with a smile. In their opinion, since the third elder was going to accept this disciple as an elder's disciple, the other elders were too embarrassed to compete with him. In the eyes of these elders, this batch of new disciples wasn't very good, but there were still a few good seedlings that were worth nurturing. The once-in-a-century Yingtian sect's 36 monastery competition was not far away. Among the true disciples and elders' disciples, only one or two would be able to hold the fort. At this time, the outcome of the battle between the two experts on the stage had been decided. Lin Xian was sent flying by Feng Yu's palm and fell off the stage. He staggered a few steps and forcefully swallowed the blood that had welled up in his throat. Without saying a word, he turned and left. Feng Yu looked at Lin Xian's back. Although he had defeated Lin Xian, his state of mind was very calm. He was neither happy nor sad, maintaining his peak state. Well done. The new disciples below the stage were all cheering for Feng Yu on the stage. Third elder Feng Feiyang, who was sitting on a cloud, smiled as he looked at Feng Yu on the stage. He nodded, very satisfied with Feng Yu's performance. Let me. At this time, a loud shout rang out. Everyone hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a tall and mighty disciple in green robes walking over like a fierce beast. Why is he here? Someone exclaimed. Isn't he already qualified to become a true disciple? Why is he here to fight? Those who knew this burly man looked at him in disbelief. Gu Fei's eyes lit up when he saw this man. This guy was definitely over 2 meters tall, and his muscles were well developed. His arms revealed his bronze skin. This burly man gave off a feeling of power. Zhao Tianlong, why are you here? At this time, a voice came from the sky. Eldest senior brother Gu Fei glanced at third elder Feng Feiyang before standing up. At this time, Gu Fei also learned about the background of this burly man from the conversation of the green-robed disciples. This burly man's name was Zhao Tianlong. He was originally the son of an ordinary hunter, but by chance, he obtained a body-tempering technique. Not only did he build a body of muscles, but he also cultivated true energy from the outside to the inside. He became an inborn expert and was qualified to participate in the entrance trial of Yingtian sect. 10 years ago, he relied on a pair of iron fists to fight his way out of the trial. 10 years later, he was already a half-step immortal with a great mastery of the body-tempering technique. His body was strong enough to withstand the attack of a spiritual weapon, and he could destroy a small mountain with a single punch. Even the beasts in the primogenitor mountain that were known for their strength weren't a match for him. Someone saw Zhao Tianlong tear a tiger-elephant beast into two with their own eyes. At this time, third elder Feng Feiyang, who was sitting on the cloud, couldn't help but frown when he saw Zhao Tianlong. Zhao Tianlong was a lunatic. His body was extremely strong, and so was his strength. An ordinary half-step immortal was no match for him. If Feng Yu was killed by Zhao Tianlong, it would be a great loss to the Feng clan. When Zhao Tianlong was still a few dozen meters away from the arena, he stomped his right foot on the ground. With a bang, his entire body soared up into the sky and landed on the arena. Half-step immortal? Feng Yu stared at Zhao Tianlong, his pupils constricting. In the next moment, rays of spiritual light rushed out from his body and flew back to his body. Soon, a golden vest appeared on Feng Yu's body. Swoosh! A pair of golden wings spread out from Feng Yu's back. This was a secret treasure of the Feng family. It was called the Wings of Wind God, a spiritual weapon. With the Wings of Wind God, Feng Yu's confidence was boosted. He was confident that he could even fight against a half-step immortal god. Fist energy materialization. What a guy! At this moment, even the eyes of the elders in the sky lit up. The battle strength displayed by Zhao Tianlong was too shocking. He was only a half-step immortal, but he already had the ability to materialize his qi. To a certain extent, Materializing his chi was already considered a divine ability. Only immortals possessed divine abilities. Once one became an immortal, a divine ability would be born naturally. This was what it meant to be an immortal. The spectators below the stage were all stunned when they saw the scene on the stage. Feng Yu was shocked. He flapped his wings and soared into the sky. However, the momentum of the dragon-shaped fist energy was extremely ferocious and fast. It caught up with Feng Yu in an instant and blasted him high into the sky. Feng Yu felt as if he had been hit by a huge mountain. He spat out a mouthful of blood as if he was going to fall apart. He fell from the sky like a kite with a broken string. At this moment, the third elder, Feng Feiyang, who was sitting on the clouds in the sky, saw this scene and his face instantly turned gloomy. Shangguan Feixiong glanced at Feng Feiyang and couldn't help but pray for Zhao Tianlong in his heart. Zhao Tianlong had offended the third elder. At this moment, a white-robed disciple from Yingtian's sect soared into the sky and wrapped his arms around Feng Yu. He took a deep look at Zhao Tianlong on the stage before turning around and leaving the square with Feng Yu in his arms. Feng Yu had actually been knocked unconscious by Zhao Tianlong's punch. At this moment, even the white-robed disciples of Yingtian's sect looked at Zhao Tianlong differently. "Come on, defeat me, but I'm asking for a defeat." Zhao Tianlong stood on the stage and swept his domineering gaze across the cultivators below the stage. Most of them didn't dare to make eye contact with Zhao Tianlong. However, there were a few who weren't afraid of Zhao Tianlong. They directly met Zhao Tianlong's gaze with blazing battle intent. "Do you want to go up and show off your might?" Gu Fei suddenly asked Yang Zhan, who was beside him. "What?" Yang Zhan was startled when he heard this, but he was pleasantly surprised. Chapter 37:21. Zhao Tianlong had defeated Feng Yu. The battle prowess he had displayed in this battle had stunned the spectators in the public square. Even the white-robed direct disciples from the Yingtian sect were indescribably shocked. Fist energy transforming into a dragon, this could already be considered a type of divine ability. This was a battle technique divine ability that was extremely powerful. With just one punch, Feng Yu was already out of luck. Even the wings of the wind god couldn't protect him. For a moment, no one below the stage dared to step forward. However, this was only temporary, because there were still a few cultivators in the public square who could compete with Zhao Tianlong. "Zhao Tianlong, I'll fight you." A figure directly walked out from the crowd. It was a green-robed disciple. He was short, skinny, and had tan skin. His arms were so long that they were almost touching the ground. At first glance, this green-robed disciple was simply an ape. "Mad monkey do you want?" When the green-robed disciples saw the monkey-like green-robed disciple, some of them immediately exclaimed. This Du Yuan was also a ruthless character. Among the green-robed disciples, only he dared to compete with Zhao Tianlong. Furthermore, his cultivation and battle prowess were definitely not weaker than Zhao Tianlong's. The mad monkey Du Yuan leapt up from the ground and landed on the stage. Then, he walked step by step to stand opposite Zhao Tianlong. "I really admire your courage." Zhao Tianlong stared at the mad monkey Du Yuan and said coldly. "Oomph." Du Yuan sneered and said, "Cut the crap. Make your move." "As you wish," Zhao Tianlong said as he took a step forward. In an instant, he appeared in front of Du Yuan and fiercely smashed his fist towards Du Yuan's head. So fast, Du Yuan was taken aback. He moved his feet, leaving behind an afterimage on his original spot. His real body had already appeared on Zhao Tianlong's left side in an instant. His hand directly chopped towards Zhao Tianlong's neck. Swish! An air-piercing sound rang out. It was as if a real sharp blade had cut through the void. The power of Du Yuan's hand chop could not be underestimated. In the eyes of the immortals, a battle between cultivators below the immortal realm was simply not worth watching. In fact, the 12th elder had only come out to support the situation. When they encountered a good seedling, these elders would naturally accept them into their sect. However, this batch of disciples didn't seem to be very good, which made the 12th elder even more disinterested. Kill! Zhao Tianlong's furious roar was akin to a sudden clap of thunder, causing the ears of the spectators in the square to ring. Completely ignoring Du Yuan's hand chop, He exhaled and sent a fist, smashing towards Du Yuan's chest. This punch caused the clothes on Zhao Tianlong's body to swell up, while his long hair fluttered about in a disorderly manner. Those who were a little timid would have been scared out of their wits by his roar. A dragon-shaped fist force rushed out from Zhao Tianlong's fist. The violent power contained within it was even stronger and more ferocious than when he had sent Feng Yu flying. This guy was holding back just now? Everyone below the arena was shocked. Du Yuan did not dare to face Zhao Tianlong head-on. Like a nimble monkey, he shrunk his body, instantly evading Zhao Tianlong's dragon-shaped fist force before sending his hands straight towards Zhao Tianlong's face. He was very clear about Zhao Tianlong's weaknesses. Zhao Tianlong's entire body only had his eyes, mouth, and the anus as his weak points. However, those 3 spots on Zhao Tianlong's body weren't so easy to hit. Zhao Tianlong closed his eyes before sending his hands out to grab Du Yuan. As long as he managed to grab Du Yuan would be finished. Seemingly knowing that Zhao Tianlong would use this move, Du Yuan's body sunk before suddenly crouching on the ground. His right index and middle fingers came together before stabbing towards Zhao Tianlong's anus. This guy actually wanted to break his anus. You're courting death. Zhao Tianlong roared furiously as he used his 2 forks to twist and break Du Yuan's arms. Du Yuan hastily retracted his hands. Zhao Tianlong's body was as hard as steel and as strong as a dragon. Being touched by any part of his body would be disastrous. Du Yuan was extremely slippery as he immediately rolled to the side. Do you only know these despicable moves? Zhao Tianlong stared at Du Yuan, who had stood up from the ground, as he spoke out in disdain. He did not give chase. Du Yuan had even used a move like gouging his eyes and inserting his anus, completely infuriating Zhao Tianlong. Why do you care what move I use? It's fine as long as I can defeat you, Du Yuan said disapprovingly. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything. Hearing this, Zhao Tianlong felt even more disdain. Ambitious and ruthless. Gu Fei uttered these 2 words as he looked at Du Yuan on the stage. If Du Yuan was able to mature, he would definitely become a formidable and ruthless character. At this moment, the 2 demigod-rank powerhouses on the stage started fighting once again. In the end, Du Yuan was unable to break Zhao Tianlong's anus and was thrown off the stage by Zhao Tianlong. One of his arms was crippled, turning him into a one-armed crazy monkey. As Gu Fei looked at the awe-inspiring Zhao Tianlong on the stage, a strange smile suddenly appeared on his face as he sent a hand seal into Yang Zhan's body. In the next instant, an extremely powerful energy fluctuation erupted from Yang Zhan's body. What's going on? Yang Zhan jumped in fright. Junior brother, do you want to fight me? Come on up then. Zhao Tianlong's voice rang out from the stage. Yang Zhan raised his head and saw Zhao Tianlong glaring at him like a ferocious beast, as if Yang Zhan was his prey. This caused Yang Zhan's heart to palpitate. This guy is really something. He actually dared to challenge Zhao Tianlong. Brother, I'm impressed. Brother, don't be a coward. Brother, it's all up to you now. Fight for the pride of our new batch of disciples. Brother, we support you. The surrounding crowd cheered. Support your ass. Yang Zhan was on the verge of tears. How could he possibly be a match for Zhao Tianlong? Brother Fei, you can't play with people like this. There's actually a new disciple who wants to challenge Zhao Tianlong. Even the elders in the sky were surprised. So that's the case. A peak demigod rank indeed has the qualifications to challenge Zhao Tianlong. In the next instant, the elders understood. They were able to see through Yang Zhan's cultivation with a single glance. To think that such a fellow was hiding among the new disciples. The eyes of the elders lit up as they looked at Yang Zhan. He's a good seedling. Don't fight with me. The second elder, who had been silent all this while, shouted at the other elders. A disciple like Zhao Tianlong could become an immortal with just a little guidance. In the eyes of the elders, he was naturally a good seedling. The other elders even had the thought of accepting him as a disciple. However, they would never have guessed that Yang Zhan's cultivation was only temporarily raised by Gu Fei. Chapter 37:22. Brother Fei, this? Yang Zhan was dumbfounded. He didn't want to go up the stage and fight against the ferocious beast Zhao Tianlong. This Zhao Tianlong was simply too strong. His body was as tough as steel, and even spiritual weapons couldn't injure him. Brother, don't be a coward. Go. Right, let these senior brothers witness our might. Go, go, go. The surrounding new disciples began to cheer. Soon, all the new disciples in the plaza were shouting in unison, their voices echoing throughout the plaza. These fellows. The big senior brother of the Ingtian courtyard frowned when he saw this scene. He glanced at the 12 elders, who seemed to have turned a blind eye to this scene. These elders were all thinking about how to recruit Yang Zhan. They were also very curious about who was stronger between the two. Just go up and have some fun. Gu Fei looked at Yang Zhan with a smile, but Yang Zhan bitterly looked at Zhao Tianlong on the stage. Although Brother Fei had increased his cultivation and combat strength, how could he be Zhao Tianlong's opponent? This fellow had just defeated Feng Yu. Go on, it's fine. Gu Fei patted Yang Zhan's shoulder in consolation. Brother Fei, you have to watch me. Yang Zhan had no choice but to brace himself and go up. Good, brother. You've got guts. The surrounding fellows, who wished to see the world in chaos, cheered again. Brother, I admire you. If you die, I'll collect your corpse. Someone shouted at Yang Zhan. Fuck. How about this, daddy, collect your corpse? Yang Zhan angrily shouted at the fellow. If you want to fight, then fight. Stop being so wishy-washy like a girl. At this moment, Zhao Tianlong's incomparably tyrannical voice resounded from the stage. He was already somewhat impatient. I'm coming. I'm coming. What's the rush? Yang Zhan said as he stomped on the ground with his right foot. His entire body soared into the sky and landed on the stage. Facing Zhao Tianlong's sharp gaze, Yang Zhan's heart palpitated. Oomph! You dare to come up like this? What kind of person was Zhao Tianlong? Yang Zhan's subtle expressions were all seen by him. Such a coward actually had the guts to step onto the stage. What did you say? Upon hearing Zhao Tianlong's words, Yang Zhan abruptly raised his head and stared at Zhao Tianlong. His eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky as a powerful aura surged out from his body. In that instant, Yang Zhan seemed to have become another person. Zhao Tianlong could not help but gawk when he sensed the changes in Yang Zhan's body. Could this fellow be pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? A fellow who could cultivate to the demigod realm was definitely not a coward. Zhao Tianlong immediately retracted his contempt. You've angered me. The consequences will be dire. Yang Zhan glared at Zhao Tianlong as an ominous glint flickered in his eyes. This fellow actually dared to look down on him. This daddy even dared to contend against the beast sovereign back in the training grounds. Who the hell do you think you are? Is that so? So what? Zhao Tianlong said proudly. He was very confident that who below the immortal god realm could be his match? Zhao Tianlong cultivated in the Nine Heavens tyrant body technique. His fleshly body had been tempered to the point where he could block the attack of a spirit artifact with his bare hands. Among the demigods, Zhao Tianlong was confident that no one's fleshly body could be stronger than his. However, the Nine Heavens tyrant body technique that Zhao Tianlong had obtained was not a complete cultivation technique. It was merely a fragment. Otherwise, he would not have left behind such a huge hidden danger while cultivating this cultivation technique. Go to hell. Yang Zhan did not waste any more words with Zhao Tianlong. He directly sent a fist smashing towards Zhao Tianlong. This attack actually contained the power of the 5 elements. Even Yang Zhan was dumbfounded. This wasn't his battle technique. It was definitely Brother Fei's doing. Yang Zhan's guess was correct. This kind of battle was too boring for Gu Fei. He naturally wanted to find some entertainment for himself. Not only did he temporarily help Yang Zhan increase his cultivation, he also planted a strand of his will in Yang Zhan's body. Therefore, the current Yang Zhan was like Gu Fei in the demigod realm. No one present was able to see anything strange. Even the monastery master was unable to see anything. How could these saint kings or even saint emperors see through Gu Fei's techniques? That was the difference. Even though Gu Fei had sealed his cultivation base, the techniques he used were still not something anyone could see through. 5 elements energy? At this time, The eyes of the elders in the sky brightened. They had also misjudged. This disciple actually had a five-element spiritual body? The Ying sect was an immortal cultivation sect. They paid great attention to the constitution, which was what they called a spiritual body. It was also known as an immortal root, immortal meridian, and so on. In short, these were just different names for the same thing. What Yang Zhan had used was the five-element fist that Gu Fei had created. This kind of fist technique could draw upon the five elements' energy of heaven and earth for one's own use. That caused all the elders in the sky to be incomparably excited. There were thousands of spiritual bodies, but those who had a five-element spiritual body were extremely rare. At least in the Ying sect's primogeniture mountain monastery, there hadn't been a five-element spiritual body in over 500 years. It was no wonder that the elders of the Ying courtyard were so excited. Second brother, I want to discuss something with you. The first elder suddenly said to the second elder, Boss, you already have Lu Chun. Don't compete with me. The second elder's old face immediately sank. The first elder's eldest disciple Lu Chun was in existence second only to Shangguan Feixiong. Haha, good seedlings are hard to find. The third elder Feng Feiyang laughed. Second brother, although I have many disciples, none of them are good enough. Why don't you give this little guy to me? The 12th elder said to the second elder with a smile. I'm going to get angry if you keep acting like this. The second elder's expression immediately darkened. Second brother, why are you so serious? Isn't it just a five-element spiritual body? The first elder said disapprovingly. Oomph. The second elder was in a bad mood. Then why are you still competing with me? Boom. Right at this moment, a loud sound came from below, attracting the attention of all the elders. On the stage below, two fists collided. A powerful demigod strength erupted, causing the stage to shake and the two experts to simultaneously take 2 steps back. Yang Zhan appeared as though he was possessed. The power of the five elements gushed forth from his body as he continued punching towards Zhao Tianlong. A blinding fiery light erupted from his fist as the power of the fire elemental attribute erupted forth. Good. Zhao Tianlong took a step forward and also punched out. His fist turned a purplish black, as if it had turned into a piece of divine metal. Boom. Another loud sound rang out as the two fists collided. The two forces were like volcanic eruptions, colliding together and spreading out in all directions. Chapter 37-23. It was as if Yang Zhan had been possessed by Gu Fei. Displaying the five-element fist, he directly clashed with Zhao Tianlong on the martial stage. At this moment, Yang Zhan had already lost control of his body. The will that Gu Fei had planted in his body had taken over his control. This was also the reason why Yang Zhan was no longer afraid. It had to be known that ever since Gu Fei had made his debut, he had been courageously advancing forward, crushing everything in his path. He had never been afraid. Right now, it was as if Gu Fei was exchanging blows with Zhao Tianlong. How is this possible? Zhao Tianlong was incomparably shocked. His opponent's fist was imbued with a powerful fire element fist energy, causing him to involuntarily take 3 steps back. There's nothing impossible about it, Yang Zhan calmly said. A powerful aura surged out from his body. At this moment, he was simply like a reincarnated god of war, invincible. Zhao Tianlong could feel the enormous pressure coming from Yang Zhan. At this moment, everyone below the martial stage was stupefied. Although they had been clamoring for Yang Zhan to step onto the martial stage, none of them had imagined that Yang Zhan would actually be able to contend against Zhao Tianlong. I never imagined that there would be such a figure amongst this batch of disciples. The group of elders sitting high above the clouds were all shocked. Zhao Tianlong was known as the #1 disciple amongst the green-robe disciples, but this new disciple was actually able to suppress him. Even Shangguan Feixiong's expression had become incomparably grave as he looked at Yang Zhan on the martial stage. Five-element spiritual body? Shangguan Feixiong's pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at Yang Zhan on the martial stage. At this moment, Gu Fei, who was mixed within the crowd, revealed a complacent smile. Today, he would let Yang Zhan amaze the world with a single brilliant feat that would be too fun. You can go down for me. Yang Zhan directly charged towards Zhao Tianlong. With just a single step, his aura soared to its peak. Swish! In the next instant, Yang Zhan's figure disappeared. At the same time, Zhao Tianlong felt all the hairs on his body stand on end. Without any warning, a figure suddenly appeared above his head. Then, a foot stomped down on his head. A violent earth element energy surged out from Yang Zhan's foot. The space beneath Yang Zhan's feet seemed to collapse from his stomp. Damn it! With a furious roar, Zhao Tianlong sent both his fists rumbling upwards. A dragon's roar seemed to ring out as two dragon-shaped fist energies rushed into the sky, instantly colliding against Yang Zhan's descending right leg. Boom! Two dragon-shaped fist energies exploded in an instant, sending Yang Zhan flying high into the sky. Head down and feet up, he swooped down towards Zhao Tianlong like a divine eagle. A phantom of a golden divine eagle emerged from his body. Zhao Tianlong was incomparably shocked. How could this fellow's fleshly body be stronger than his? Could this fellow also be a body-tempering cultivator? At this moment, Yang Zhan's right hand stretched out. Like an eagle's claw, he grabbed at Zhao Tianlong's head. The divine eagle was incomparably ferocious and swift when it hunted its prey. Zhao Tianlong only had enough time to tilt his head to the side, allowing Yang Zhan's right claw to graze past his forehead. Zhao Tianlong felt a fiery pain on his forehead where Yang Zhan's finger had grazed. Reaching out to feel it, he discovered that there was actually blood on his hand. Zhao Tianlong's shock was no small matter. He hadn't been injured for a long time. He didn't expect that this fellow, who had just joined the sect and had yet to acknowledge a master, could actually injure him. Your body-tempering technique is only isos, Yang Zhan said indifferently. What did you say? Zhao Tianlong was both shocked and angry. This fellow actually dared to look down on his body-tempering technique. However, the battle strength displayed by this fellow was very shocking. This fellow had the capital to be arrogant. Could it be that this Yang Zhan has been acting dumb all this while? Below the stage, Wang Long, who was mixed in the crowd, couldn't help but be shocked and angry when he saw this scene. He didn't expect Yang Zhan to have such a cultivation base. It seemed that he had been fooled by Yang Zhan. No wonder this fellow had been following Gu Fei. Could it be that he and Gu Fei already knew each other before this? No one could answer Wang Long's question. Wang Long also didn't dare to ask Gu Fei or Yang Zhan. One should know that he and Yang Zhan belonged to two different worlds. Although Wang Long's cultivation base had broken through to the Xiantian realm, Yang Zhan was already a half-step immortal. The gap between them was too big. The current Yang Zhan was like a dragon in the sky in Wang Long's eyes, while he, Wang Long, had become a worm. You're not my opponent. Yang Zhan looked at Zhao Tianlong indifferently, no longer attacking. At this time, the winner had been decided. Zhao Tianlong was being suppressed by Yang Zhan. This was an indisputable fact that everyone could see, but Zhao Tianlong was very unwilling. If he were to walk down the stage with just a word from Yang Zhan, how could he continue to mingle in the Yingtian courtyard? Cut the crap. You want me to admit defeat? Impossible. Zhao Tianlong was like a wounded beast, staring at Yang Zhan. His battle intent was still as strong as before. In that case, let's fight. Yang Zhan didn't speak anymore. A person like Zhao Tianlong would only admit defeat after thoroughly defeating him. A few words alone wouldn't be able to scare this fellow. Tyrannical Dragon 9 Slaughter Fist? Zhao Tianlong roared. His fists were like dragons emerging from the sea, smashing towards Yang Zhan. The dragon-shaped fist energy rushed out from Yang Zhan's fist, and the two dragons intertwined together, causing the power it erupted to multiply. Before the fist energy even reached him, Yang Zhan's hair had already been blown away by the fist wind, causing it to flutter behind him. Good. Seeing this, Yang Zhan couldn't help but nod. This Zhao Tianlong was really talented in martial arts. He had actually comprehended some tricks to using his strength. Zhao Tianlong's control over his strength was better than any of the green-robed disciples of the Yingtian sect. This was the source of his confidence. However, he didn't know that because he had cultivated the Nine Heavens Tyrant body art, a major hidden injury had been left in his body. A group of elders had already declared that he would never be able to become an immortal in this lifetime. Zhao Tianlong was a person with great perseverance, but unfortunately, he had crippled himself. Bam! Yang Zhan merely stretched out his right hand and blocked the incoming fist energy. His upper body only swayed slightly from the impact. All the spectators below the stage were dumbfounded. Even the green-robed disciples were staring at Yang Zhan on the stage, as if they were looking at a monster. This fellow someone's voice was trembling. It wasn't that they weren't shocked. This move of Zhao Tianlong's could definitely smash a small mountain. Someone had once seen him use this move to kill a beast king. The beast kings of the primogeniture mountain range weren't comparable to the beast kings in the training grounds. The beast kings here were powerful existences that could easily kill half-step immortals. How unfathomable! Chapter 37-24. Yang Zhan's technique shocked everyone. Even the 12 elders watching from the sky were moved. This was a rare seedling that only appeared once every 500 years. Even the great elder had the thought of accepting him as a disciple, let alone the other elders. Then I'll let you witness my true strength. Zhao Tianlong's expression turned incomparably solemn when he saw Yang Zhan easily block the first strike of his tyrant dragon Nine Death's fist. In the next instant, an even more powerful energy fluctuation erupted from his body. His entire body had turned purplish-black, and there was a layer of faint purple light flowing on his skin that was not covered by his clothes. His muscles were bulging. Zhao Tianlong's entire body seemed to be filled with air as a sonic boom rang out from his body. His entire body suddenly grew a lot taller, as if he had transformed into an incomparably muscular giant. Yang Zhan raised his head to look at Zhao Tianlong, feeling extremely shocked. Zhao Tianlong's body-tempering technique was indeed unique. Unfortunately, it was a flawed body-tempering technique. An extremely berserk aura erupted from Zhao Tianlong's body. Everyone below the stage was incomparably shocked. Zhao Tianlong had actually held back. However, Gu Fei shook his head. Zhao Tianlong was exhausting his life force. If he frantically used this body-tempering technique, the hidden injuries on his body would only worsen. He was using his life to fight. Even if he could defeat Yang Zhan, he would not be able to live for long. At this moment, Zhao Tianlong completely ignored Yang Zhan's attack as he strode towards Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan's body jerked as the power of the 5 elements erupted. In the next instant, he threw a punch at the approaching Zhao Tianlong. In that instant, the power of the 5 elements frantically converged on his fist. With the power of the 5 elements combined, the energy fluctuations that erupted from Yang Zhan's fist instantly doubled. His fist moved rapidly in the air, causing faint ripples to appear everywhere it passed. The power of the 5 elements combined, a technique that is close to the Tao. The elders in the sky were shocked by Yang Zhan's punch. This was a battle technique that only an immortal could execute. Although it seemed simple, it contained the profundities of the 5 elements and touched upon the Tao. However, Zhao Tianlong did not dodge or evade Yang Zhan's mighty punch. Instead, his large hand directly grabbed at Yang Zhan's head. This was a completely lose-lose strategy. Bam! Yang Zhan's fist smashed into Zhao Tianlong's chest. In the next instant, Zhao Tianlong's feet left the ground as he was sent flying backwards. Without any suspense, the power behind Yang Zhan's punch was already close to that of an immortal. No matter how strong Zhao Tianlong was, it was impossible for him to block this punch. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Zhao Tianlong directly fell off the stage, his entire body deflating like a deflated balloon. Yang Zhan shook his head and said helplessly, "It's just a matter of one punch. Sigh, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have fought with you for so long." At this moment, Zhao Tianlong had already landed on the ground. Staring at Yang Zhan on the stage, he slowly said, "I've lost. Is winning or losing that important?" Yang Zhan shrugged. Zhao Tianlong wanted to say something, but his face suddenly flushed red. With a wah, he spat out a mouthful of blood. There seemed to be some clots in the blood. Zhao Tianlong is finished. The elders in the sky shook their heads when they saw this scene. Zhao Tianlong had forcefully used a big move, and had already overdrawn his body. Now, he had been punched by Yang Zhan. Adding old wounds to new injuries, it was already amazing that Zhao Tianlong could still stand. Senior brother, an ordinary-looking disciple in green robes walked up, placed his hand on Zhao Tianlong's shoulder, and left the square with him. This disciple in green robes was actually supporting Zhao Tianlong. It was just that he did it secretly. Gu Fei didn't say anything as he watched Zhao Tianlong's departing figure. However, his intuition told him that this Zhao Tianlong was definitely someone with a story. At this moment, Yang Zhan had defeated Zhao Tianlong with a single punch. This caused all the disciples in green robes and the new disciples to be dumbfounded and in disbelief. One had to know that Zhao Tianlong was known as the #1 existence in Yingtian courtyard below the immortal realm. He was invincible against those below the immortal realm. However, who would have thought that he would be defeated by a new disciple who had yet to acknowledge a master? Those disciples in green robes were naturally unconvinced, but they didn't dare to challenge Yang Zhan on the stage. Within the crowd, Wang Long's expression was somewhat complicated as he looked at Yang Zhan on the stage. This was the importance of standing on the right team. If he had firmly supported Gu Fei that day, then the person standing on the stage right now would be him. If anyone is unconvinced, feel free to come up. Yang Zhan looked at the crowd of cultivators below the stage and arrogantly said. No one spoke. Even Zhao Tianlong had been defeated by Yang Zhan. Who else would dare to court death? As for those white-robed immortal realm disciples, they couldn't act. No one is coming up? Doesn't that mean I'm #1? Yang Zhan said with surprise and joy. However, as he thought about it, his forehead began to sweat. This wasn't his true cultivation. If the elders of Yingtian courtyard were to find out that he was faking it, the consequences would be dire. He wouldn't be able to withstand the fury of the courtyard's elders. As he thought of this, Yang Zhan couldn't help but look at Gu Fei below the stage. At this time, no one spoke. Yang Zhan had single-handedly suppressed the group of Yingtian courtyard disciples to the point where they didn't even dare to raise their heads. What kind of style was this? The new disciples were incomparably envious. Many of them even viewed Yang Zhan as their idol. He's invincible below the immortal realm. Up in the sky, the great elder who rarely spoke suddenly said such a sentence. Invincible below the immortal realm? Everyone was shocked to the extreme. This was definitely the highest evaluation. Just at this moment, a crane carrying a white-robed, white-haired old man descended from the sky and arrived in the sky above the square. The arrival of the man and the crane actually gave off a feeling of a spring breeze. The vitality of the world became exuberant. Greetings, Hall Master. Seeing the old man sitting on the back of the crane, the 12 elders sitting on the immortal clouds hurriedly stood up and saluted the old man. Greetings, Master. Greetings, Hall Master. In an instant, all the white-robed disciples of Yingtian courtyard, regardless of whether they were the Hall Master's disciples, the elders' disciples, the true disciples, or the green-robed disciples, all bowed to the old man on the back of the crane. Hall Master? Seeing this scene, the new disciples on the square were all dumbfounded. Some of them hurriedly followed suit and bowed to the old man in fear. But some of them remained standing. Gu Fei and Yang Zhan didn't bow to the old man in the sky. Gu Fei only bowed to his parents and master. Other than them, he never bowed to anyone else. HM? Chapter 37-25. The Hall Master's arrival shocked everyone in the Yingtian courtyard. The 12 elders hurriedly stood up and saluted the Hall Master. All the disciples of the Yingtian courtyard knelt down in front of the courtyard master who was riding on the immortal crane. The new disciples also knelt down in front of them. However, there were two people who stood out because they didn't kneel at all. They were still standing there with their backs ramrod straight. These two people were naturally Gu Fei and Yang Zhan. Are these two guys stupid? Seeing that someone didn't salute the Hall Master in the sky, everyone thought that Gu Fei and Yang Zhan had been scared silly. Only Gu Fei knew that the person who could scare him silly in this world hadn't appeared yet. All right, get up. The Hall Master's voice came down from the sky. His voice was calm and dignified. The 12 elders straightened their bodies. The white-robed and green-robed disciples, as well as the new disciples in the square, hurriedly stood up. In the eyes of these disciples, the hall master's words were like an imperial edict. The hall master actually came. Everyone had already guessed why the hall master had personally come. The second elder was incomparably nervous at this moment. He could ignore the other elders, including the first elder, but the hall master was different. This batch of disciples is not bad. Feixiong, after the competition is over, bring that junior brother on the stage to see me. The hall master said to Shangguan Feixiong. Yes, master. Shangguan Feixiong hurriedly replied. This. The second elder was dumbfounded. Hall master, you can't do this. The other elders looked at the second elder with schadenfreude. They didn't compete with the second elder for disciples, but when the hall master wanted to take a disciple, no one dared to say anything. Then, the hall master rode the immortal crane and soared into the sky. He flew to the sacred mountain in the sky and disappeared. The immortal Tao aura that was filled with vitality also dissipated in the void, as if it had never appeared. The hall master left just like that? Everyone was baffled. There was no need for the hall master to come personally. Couldn't he just send a voice transmission to Shangguan Feixiong? What should we do? Gu Fei wasn't scared out of his wits, but Yang Zhan was completely dumbfounded. Who would dare to refuse the hall master's summons? But once the elder hall master saw through him, wouldn't he be dead for sure? What first place in the competition? What elder's favor? To Yang Zhan, all of this was fart. He hurriedly jumped down from the stage and arrived at Gu Fei's side. Brother Fei, Yang Zhan was truly anxious. When he thought of going to see the hall master, he was so terrified that his legs began to tremble. Calm down, I'm here. What are you afraid of? Gu Fei's voice resounded in Yang Zhan's mind. But, Brother Fei, Yang Zhan still wanted to say something. All right, let's leave it at that. Perhaps there will be an unexpected surprise when you meet the Academy Master, Gu Fei continued. Sigh, I hope it's not a scare. Yang Zhan said helplessly. At this time, a group of people gradually gathered around Yang Zhan. Boss, are you taking in underlings? A dark-skinned young cultivator came over and said. Scram. Yang Zhan snappily said. The young cultivator hastily shrunk his neck and retreated. Seeing that someone was rebuffed by Yang Zhan, the others naturally did not dare to approach. But at this time, these new disciples were filled with reverence towards Yang Zhan. Even the green-robed disciples were apprehensive towards Yang Zhan, not daring to rashly provoke him. No one would have thought that Yang Zhan would be favored by the hall master. If he could become the hall master's inner disciple, he would definitely reach the heavens in a single bound. Countless low-level disciples of Yingtian Courtyard were envious of Yang Zhan, especially those who knew him. Wang Long was incomparably depressed. After a while, with Shangguan Feixiong presiding over the competition continued. In a short while, the entire square became lively again. Among the new disciples, there were indeed a few outstanding characters. Although they were not as abnormal as Yang Zhan, they still could not be underestimated. After a little more than 2 hours, this unruly competition came to an end. Although this competition seemed very lively, there were very few people who truly attracted attention. Previously, Feng Yu had been defeated by Zhao Tianlong, but as the descendant of the third elder, he could naturally become an elder's inner disciple. The best seedlings had already been reserved by the hall master, so the 12 elders had no interest in the remaining disciples. Among the 12 elders, the 12th elder accepted 3 disciples, and the 11th elder accepted 1 disciple. The other elders simply had no interest in accepting disciples. Junior brother, come with me. At the end of the competition, Shangguan Feixiong came looking for Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan had no choice but to follow behind Shangguan Feixiong and leave the square. Shangguan Feixiong brought Yang Zhan and soared into the sky, flying towards the sacred mountain in the sky. Soon, they arrived at the peak of the sacred mountain and landed on the open space in front of the palace. At this time, Gu Fei, who was on the square, suddenly raised his head and looked towards the sacred mountain in the sky. His gaze seemed to pierce through the void, as if he could see the scene at the peak of the sacred mountain. If I want to play, I'll play big, Gu Fei muttered to himself. He retracted his gaze, and a cold, evil smile appeared on his face. At the peak of the sacred mountain, Shangguan Feixiong brought Yang Zhan directly to the palace in front of them. It was a huge hall, and the old man sitting on the throne in the middle of the hall was the hall master. The red-crowned crane was nowhere to be seen. When Shangguan Feixiong brought Yang Zhan to the door of the hall, the door suddenly opened. Shangguan Feixiong brought Yang Zhan into the hall. Gu Fei did not retract the strand of will he had planted in Yang Zhan's body, and Yang Zhan's cultivation and battle prowess did not show any signs of diminishing. "Greetings, master." "Greetings, hall master." Shangguan Feixiong and Yang Zhan hurriedly knelt towards the throne. "Rise." The hall master waved his hand and said, "Are you willing to take me as your master?" The hall master looked at Yang Zhan and asked calmly. At this time, there were still 12 elders standing in the hall. Yang Zhan was stunned when he heard this. "Junior brother, are you still not willing?" Shangguan Feixiong hurriedly pulled Yang Zhan back. "He's probably too happy to be stupid. The hall master's disciple has reached the heavens in a single step." The 12 elders whispered, especially the second elder. Now that the hall master had interfered, his plan to take in a disciple would immediately be ruined. He felt extremely depressed. "Junior brother." Seeing that Yang Zhan was still hesitating, Shangguan Feixiong was a little unhappy. "The hall master's master has taken a liking to you, and that's your fortune. Yet, you're still hesitating?" "I'm not willing." Yang Zhan suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. He directly raised his head and looked at the hall master on the throne. "What?" Chapter 37:26. At the peak of the Ying Tian sect's 36th monastery's upper courtyard, everyone was petrified, staring dumbfoundedly at Yang Zhan. This fellow was actually unwilling to take the hall master as his master? Had he gone crazy? That was the hall master, the 36th monastery's hall master. Within the entire monastery, he had the highest status, the highest cultivation base, and the highest combat ability. Did I hear wrongly? This little fellow isn't willing to take the hall master as his master? The second elder stared in disbelief at Yang Zhan, who was standing in the main hall. "Second senior apprentice brother, your chance has come, haha." Third elder Feng Feiyang mocked. His eyes flashed with a bright light. What does this little guy want? He actually dared to ignore the hall master's favor? Junior apprentice brother, you, Shangguan Feixiong, who was standing beside Yang Zhan, was dumbfounded. This was a chance to reach the heavens in a single step. Just how many people had fought so hard to obtain the hall master's attention? It was rare for the hall master to take the initiative to accept a disciple. This was something that hadn't happened in the past 500 years. If it was anyone else, they would probably go crazy with joy. But Yang Zhan had actually refused the hall master. Shangguan Feixiong had an urge to slap him to death. The hall master's other disciples were also in the palace. They were all furiously glaring at Yang Zhan. The fact that the hall master had taken a liking to him was his good fortune. But this fellow didn't know what was good for him. The first elder didn't say anything. He just calmly watched. He was the first elder, who was above just one person. It would be impossible for him to not have any ambitions for the hall master's position. However, whether it was in terms of cultivation base or combat ability, the hall master suppressed the first elder. It wasn't impossible for the first elder to stand out, but it would be difficult. At this time, the first elder was also happy to watch a play. It had been a long time since he had seen the hall master suffer. The other elders' expressions all became grave. Just what was going on with this fellow? Could he be a spy from the Burning Heaven sect who had infiltrated the monastery? The Burning Heaven sect was the Ying Tian sect's mortal enemy. The Brahma sect's patriarch had fought with the Ying Tian sect countless times, with both sides winning and losing. Neither side was able to do anything to the other. But the Burning Heaven sect was a corrupt devil sect, and in order to eradicate the Ying Tian sect, they would stop at nothing. For the Burning Heaven sect's people to infiltrate the Ying Tian monastery wasn't strange at all. Are you really not willing? The hall lord who sat on the throne in the center of the great hall stared down at Yang Zhan. His gaze was incomparably sharp as a powerful immortal might gushed forth from him. Everyone was shocked. and the disciples felt like they were about to suffocate. "Master," the disciples looked at the dean on the throne with awe in their eyes. Their master's cultivation was truly unfathomable. Even if they cultivated for another 1,000 years, it would be impossible for them to have such a cultivation. The Academy Master was indeed the Academy Master. Just a strand of his immortal pressure was enough to make everyone in the hall breathless. However, there was one exception, and that person was Yang Zhan. Just as the college master was inadvertently releasing his immortal might, a black-robed youth sitting under a tree in the lower courtyard suddenly opened his eyes and looked towards the divine mountain in the sky. "Is the show about to begin?" The black-clothed young man smiled, then withdrew his gaze, closed his eyes, and continued to sit cross-legged under the tree. At this time, a shocking change occurred in the hall and the sky. At this moment, Yang Zhan seemed to have become a completely different person. He suddenly raised his head to look at the hall master, a cold smile on his face. "How dare you?" Shangguan Feixiong, who was standing beside Yang Zhan, was instantly enraged. His right hand stretched out, directly pressing down on Yang Zhan's shoulder. At the same time, he sent a kick towards Yang Zhan's calf, wanting to press Yang Zhan to the ground. Shangguan Feixiong was ruthless. He wanted to teach Yang Zhan a lesson. Since Yang Zhan dared to look down on his master, he was already being merciful by not killing Yang Zhan. However, in the next moment, Shangguan Feixiong discovered that he was actually pressing down on a divine mountain. He couldn't even move Yang Zhan, and his kick had already landed on Yang Zhan's calf. Shangguan Feixiong felt as if his kick had landed on a divine steel plate. Not only was he unable to injure Yang Zhan, but the sole of his foot was also in extreme pain. How is this possible? Shangguan Feixiong was shocked to the extreme. "Oomph!" With a wave of his right hand, Shangguan Feixiong, who was still in a state of shock, was directly sent flying out of the great hall, crashing through the doors. The eyes of the disciples in the great hall almost fell to the ground. Shangguan Feixiong was the eldest senior brother of the Ingtian courtyard, and his cultivation was enough to contend against the elders. However, the eldest senior brother of the Ingtian courtyard was actually sent flying by Yang Zhan. At this time, even the 12 elders were shocked. The hall master's eyes lit up like the stars in the sky. "Who exactly are you?" The hall master stared at Yang Zhan and said in a deep voice. An overwhelming killing intent surged towards Yang Zhan, and the entire great hall immediately turned cold. The 12 elders were on their guard, and powerful immortal Tao auras spread throughout the great hall. "Who am I?" Yang Zhan tilted his head and thought for a moment, then shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'm someone you can't afford to offend." "Someone we can't afford to offend?" The second elder stared at Yang Zhan with a murderous look. This guy actually dared to play with him. If he didn't kill this guy, how could he appease his anger? "All right, if you kneel and beg for mercy, I will spare your lives. Otherwise, I will kill you directly," Yang Zhan said impatiently. "Go to hell." The second elder roared, and an immortal light rushed out from his body, turning into a fire lotus, smashing towards Yang Zhanfei in the hall. He had endured for a long time, and finally, he couldn't bear it anymore and directly attacked. As soon as the fire lotus appeared, the temperature of the entire hall immediately soared. Everyone could feel the oppressive heat wave, especially those elders and disciples. They felt as though the immortal elemental energy in their body was ignited, and their whole body felt like it was being roasted. Yang Zhan smiled and directly opened his mouth and sucked. The fire lotus was actually swallowed into his stomach in one gulp. "What?" The second elder was stunned. What was going on with this guy? He actually swallowed his 9 heavens fire lotus? How is this possible? Fire lotus from the heavens, burn the sky and boil the sea. The second elder roared and directly rushed towards Yang Zhan. His large sleeves fluttered, and one fire lotus after another rushed out from his body, flying towards Yang Zhan in an overwhelming manner. At this time, the great elder directly waved his sleeves and directly activated the great formation in the great hall, blocking the vast and mighty power of the immortal Tao. Otherwise, the elders and disciples would suffer a calamity. However, a scene that made everyone's eyeballs almost fall to the ground appeared. Yang Zhan directly opened his mouth and sucked again. Countless fire lotuses were actually swallowed into his body, leaving not a single one behind. Chapter 37:27. Yang Zhan seemed to have become a completely different person in the main hall of the Ingtian Monastery, directly challenging the hall master and the 12th elder. The second elder had a fiery temper, so he directly attacked Yang Zhan. He wanted to finish off this person who dared to look down on him. However, no one expected Yang Zhan to be this powerful. He directly punched the second elder's face, causing it to split open. The second elder howled miserably as he was sent flying toward the hall master on his throne. Oomph! The hall master extended his right hand and directly caught the flying elder. However, at this very moment, the hall master was shocked. In the next moment, the throne he sat on actually shattered into pieces, shooting in all directions. His entire body swayed, and he actually took a step back. His face became flushed. The elders all paled in fright when they saw this. Just how was this guy so powerful? Was even the hall master not his opponent? Only at this moment did the elders realize the severity of the situation. The hall master looked down and saw that the second elder's face was covered in blood. He had actually fainted. He couldn't help but be shocked. The second elder was a saint king. Even though he was only at the third heavenly layer, he had still been knocked out by a single punch. Even the hall master couldn't knock out the second elder with a single punch. You're quite skilled, sir. Sir is not a member of the Burning Sky Church, and there shouldn't be any grievances between us. Sir, why have you come? Although the hall master was shocked, he remained calm on the surface. I was bored and wanted to have fun, so I wanted to find something to do. Is that all right? Yang Zhan looked at the hall master as if nothing had happened. In the eyes of everyone in the Ingtian Monastery, the lofty hall master was no different from an ant in Yang Zhan's eyes. He could crush him with a single finger. At this moment, Yang Zhan was actually already under the control of Gu Fei's will. In the ancestral world, although Yang Zhan was a Xiantian cultivator, he was at the lowest level. The elders and hall master of the Ingtian Monastery wouldn't pay attention to him at all. But right now, these great figures had no choice but to pay attention to this little cultivator. At this moment, Yang Zhan's heart was crumbling. Brother Fei was cheating me. I'm not an expert. I'm just a fake expert. The truly powerful person was Gu Fei. What? Everyone in the main hall, including the hall master, was dumbfounded. Did this guy come here to have fun because he was bored? Was that even possible? Fellow Taoist, why don't you tell me what you want? The elder hall master stared at Yang Zhan. A powerful immortal aura spread out from his body, causing the entire hall to tremble under the impact of this immortal aura. The dean is angry. The elders in the hall all looked at the hall master in shock. They couldn't help but retreat in all directions. They didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. The dean handed the unconscious second elder to the second elder's eldest disciple to carry him away. You won't believe me even if I tell you. I can't be bothered with you. Yang Zhan looked coldly at the hall master. Oomph! The dean sneered and stretched out his hand. A huge hand immediately appeared in the sky and grabbed towards Yang Zhan. The huge hand shrouded the entire void, sealing off all of Yang Zhan's escape routes. It's always the same move. Don't you have any new tricks up your sleeves? Yang Zhan shook his head. In the next moment, he disappeared into the void. How is this possible? At that moment, Yang Zhan seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Everyone in the main hall, including the hall master, couldn't sense his aura at all. This time, even the elders became nervous. This mysterious expert was incredible. He was definitely not a nobody. He could disappear into thin air and evade their divine senses. Could he be someone from the Void Battle Race? The Void Battle Race was one of the strongest races in the ancestral realm. Even the Wood Race, the great backer of the Yingtianzong, was slightly inferior in terms of strength. If the Void Battle Race really wanted to attack the Yingtianzong, then even the God of Heaven wouldn't be able to save the Yingtianzong. Just as the Hall Master was shocked, a figure silently appeared above the Hall Master and stood on his shoulder with his hands behind his back. The Hall Master's body sank. He felt as if a divine mountain was suddenly pressing down on his shoulder. He almost fell to the ground. Roar! The Hall Master let out a roar. His entire body was surrounded by immortal light. 9 immortal runes appeared on his body, and the supreme might of a Saint Emperor erupted from his body. The entire main hall shook violently. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Especially those elders and disciples, they were collectively dumbfounded. None of them had imagined that Yang Zhan was actually so powerful. Kneel, Yang Zhan said indifferently. In the next moment, he exerted force with his legs. Bang! The Hall Master directly knelt on the ground, and his knees caused the ground to cave in. At this time, the Hall Master's face was completely red. He desperately tried to stand up, but it was all in vain. Only now did he realize that although he was a Saint Emperor, he was actually no different from an ant in front of this person. The 11 elders in the main hall were extremely terrified. At this time, they no longer had the courage to attack Yang Zhan. Even the Hall Master was not a match for him. If they went up, they would only be sending themselves to death. Are you convinced? Yang Zhan said indifferently. No. The Hall Master said angrily. He wanted to use a great technique to kill Yang Zhan, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't use any of his divine abilities. Yang Zhan used absolute strength to suppress the Hall Master's celestial core. Without celestial core, even if he had 1,000 divine abilities, he couldn't use them. If you're not convinced, then go to hell. After saying that, Yang Zhan exerted force with his legs. The Hall Master's body immediately collapsed into a cloud of blood mist. He didn't even have time to let out a scream before his body and soul were completely destroyed. The 11 elders were directly scared silly by this scene. The Hall Master, who was usually high and mighty, was actually trampled to death by someone. Even if they told this to others, no one would believe it. The fact that Yang Zhan trampled the Hall Master to death with 1 foot shocked everyone in the main hall. Are you guys convinced? Yang Zhan glanced at everyone and said. Seeing Yang Zhan's gaze sweeping over them, everyone lowered their heads. Are you convinced or not? If you don't say anything, I will take it that you guys are not convinced. Yang Zhan said indifferently to the 11 elders. At this time, these elders were envious of the second elder who was carried away by his disciple. We are convinced. We are convinced. We are willing to submit to Master. The 11 elders hurriedly knelt down in front of Yang Zhan. Even the great elder was no exception. Since the Hall Master was dead, how could the great elder dare to be unconvinced? Ha. Chapter 37:28. Gu Fei had used Yang Zhan to kill the Yingtian sect's 36th monastery's Hall Master. Now the rest was much easier to handle. He would stay behind the scenes, and everything would be handled by Yang Zhan. That way, no one would know he was the mastermind behind everything. Under Gu Fei's control, Yang Zhan had pushed First Elder Qi Yuan to the position of Yingtian sect's 36th monastery's Hall Master. That was the position First Elder Qi Yuan yearned for even in his dreams. But the entire Yingtian monastery, from the new Hall Master Qi Yuan to the 11 elders, as well as all the elders and disciples, were incomparably terrified. That was especially true of Shangguan Feixiong and his 6 junior apprentice brothers. Their master, the previous generation's Hall Master, had actually been killed by Yang Zhan. Shangguan Feixiong had never imagined that Yang Zhan, this little fellow in his eyes, had actually been a wolf in sheep's clothing. The entire monastery had been under his control in an instant. Now that First Elder had taken the position, they would probably never be able to rise again. We have to send this news back to the branch sect as soon as possible. Shangguan Feixiong and his 6 junior apprentice brothers endured. At this time, the branch sect definitely didn't know what had happened. No matter how strong Yang Zhan was, could he be stronger than a saint sovereign? Above the 36th monastery were the 12 branch sects, and the sect masters of those 12 branch sects were all saint sovereigns or above. However, Shangguan Feixiong had made a fatal mistake. He had assumed that Yang Zhan was merely a bait that Gu Fei had placed in the open. Gu Fei wanted to bait the Yingtian patriarch, that big fish. He didn't even place saint sovereigns in his eyes. However, it was not an easy task to spread the news at this time. At this time, The Yingtian courtyard looked the same as usual, without any difference. No one knew that the monastery had already changed. Shangguan Feixiong and the other disciples of the previous generation hall master had already been imprisoned. Yang Zhan acted as if nothing had happened. He returned to the residence of the new disciples and saw Gu Fei. At this time, those new disciples all looked at Yang Zhan differently. This was someone the hall master had taken a fancy to. In the eyes of the Yingtian monastery's disciples, Yang Zhan had already reached the heavens in a single step. Becoming the elder hall master's disciple was something that all new disciples didn't even dare to dream of. Brother Fei, this? In Gu Fei's residence, Yang Zhan arrived in front of Gu Fei, his voice trembling. Only now did he realize how incredible this Brother Fei was. It was impossible for Yang Zhan not to be shocked. He looked at Gu Fei with incomparable awe. Where did this Brother Fei come from? To think that he didn't even need to make a move personally. Just by borrowing his strength, he was able to easily get rid of the Yingtian courtyard's hall master and make all the elders submit to him. There's no need to panic. Just do what you need to do. If you want to become the hall master of Yingtian courtyard, I can help you. Gu Fei said indifferently. This Yang Zhan wasn't bad. He planned to help him out. Gu Fei wanted to develop his own power in the primogenitor world. No matter how strong a person was, his ability was limited. He couldn't do everything by himself. Even an extreme Dao sovereign needed others to help him. The primogenitor world was different from all the other worlds that Gu Fei had stayed in. There was no heavenly punishment here, and extreme Dao sovereigns were everywhere. Gu Fei also didn't want to let those fellows in the primogenitor world know that he had come here. Many thanks, Brother Fei. Yang Zhan was incomparably excited. He almost knelt down in front of Gu Fei. He knew that the time to change his fate had come. As long as he followed Brother Fei, he could also reach the heavens in a single step. Do your best. Gu Fei patted Yang Zhan's shoulder. Yes, Brother Fei, Yang Zhan said excitedly. He came from a small clan in the mortal world. Even if he could enter the Yingtian sect, he wouldn't have any great achievements. The elders of the Yingtian courtyard absolutely wouldn't accept him as a disciple. He might not even be able to become a true disciple of the Yingtian sect. He would only become a green-robed disciple. However, it was different now. When a person achieved the Tao, even his chickens and dogs would rise to the heavens. As long as he could reach the heavens in a single step, his clan would also quickly become powerful. Perhaps it could even become a powerful clan. All right, go and rest first, Gu Fei said. Yes, Brother Fei. Yang Zhan decided to follow Gu Fei. Wasn't it just the Yingtian sect? With Brother Fei's great ability, how could he not deal with a small Yingtian sect? Thinking about how Gu Fei used him to kill the hall master, subdue the 12 elders, and imprison Shangguan Feixiong, Yang Zhan was dumbfounded. Although he was under the control of Gu Fei's will, he was incomparably clear-headed. He clearly knew everything that happened in the upper courtyard's great hall. At this time, Yang Zhan had already returned to his original form. Gu Fei withdrew the brand on his body. Yang Zhan obediently went to rest. In truth, Yang Zhan had obtained quite a few benefits. His cultivation base had actually advanced a realm, breaking through to the void-controlling realm. That was something Yang Zhan had never expected. He needed to consolidate his realm. That was the reward Gu Fei had given him. With Gu Fei's current cultivation base, let alone helping Yang Zhan advance a realm, even directly helping him become an immortal god would be as easy as lifting a finger. The next day, Grand Elder Qi Yuan, who had already become the hall master, directly gathered the new disciples and announced that Yang Zhan and Gu Fei had become elder disciples. Gu Fei and Yang Zhan's master was Qi Yuan. Of course, this was all for the outsiders to see. The 36 heaven-defying monasteries competition was also about to arrive. This was a competition that would determine their positions and rankings. This was a major event for each monastery. This time, the 36th monastery had sent Yang Zhan, Gu Fei, and 3 other disciples to participate in this competition. The 36th monastery's competition would be held in the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. Gu Fei wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to enter the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. At that time, if he could capture the Yingtian patriarch, that would naturally be a good thing. 3 days later, early in the morning, Great Elder Qi Yuan, No. Hall Master Qi Yuan led 11 elders, Gu Fei, and 5 other elder disciples directly onto the teleportation formation. In the next moment, the teleportation formation was activated. A ball of celestial light emerged, and everyone on the teleportation formation instantly disappeared into the void, without a trace. The ancestral land of the Yingtian Zone was a rare treasured land. It was called the Green Dragon Spitting Pearl. If one looked at this ancestral land from the sky, they would see a mountain ridge that looked like a giant dragon coiling on the ground. At the head of the dragon's head, there was a spirit mountain that looked like a divine pearl spat out by the dragon. It could only be said that the ancestral land was not ordinary. Even a sect like the Yingtian sect, which didn't have a chosen, was able to occupy such a treasure ground. The precious thing about the Green Dragon Spitting Pearl was that all the spiritual qi within thousands of miles would constantly gather towards the divine pearl. So the place with the densest spiritual qi was the spirit mountain at the head of the dragon. There were no buildings on the surface of the spirit mountain, but there was an immortal cave at the peak. That immortal cave went deep into the mountain. That was the Yingtian Patriarch's cultivation area. In the entire Yingtian sect, only the Patriarch had the qualifications to cultivate on the Spirit Mountain. The Yingtian sect's branch sect masters and the other elders of the ancestral land didn't have the qualifications to cultivate on the Spirit Mountain. At this time, the entire Yingtian sect's ancestral land was bustling with noise and excitement. Cultivators could be seen everywhere in the normally desolate ancestral land. The 36th monastery's people had all come. The hall master had brought his elders and the most amazing disciples of the monastery's junior generation. All the monasteries placed great importance on this 36th monastery competition. Even the 12 branch sect masters had come. The other powers that had good relations with the Yingtian sect had also sent representatives to watch this competition. This is the difference between us. When Qi Yuan brought everyone to the Yingtian sect's ancestral land, Yang Zhan and the others were all stunned by what they saw. This was the true atmosphere of an immortal. The spiritual qi in the ancestral land had transformed into a spiritual mist that lingered around the mountain ridges. Spirit mountains floated in the sky, decorated with waterfalls and flowing springs. Pavilions could be faintly seen between the mountains, and there were spirit beasts leisurely roaming around beside the streams. Gu Fei couldn't help nodding when he saw this. The Yingtian sect was not bad. The Green Dragon Spitting Pearl was a treasure ground that could gather spiritual qi. It could be considered a rare treasure ground. Of course, in Gu Fei's eyes, this Green Dragon Spitting Pearl wasn't anything special. He had seen even better treasures than this. Senior Apprentice Brother Qi, why didn't your hall master come this time? When Gu Fei and the others arrived at the ancestral land, someone immediately came to greet them. It's Brother Qin? Qi Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw a middle-aged man in purple walking towards them. This person was Chen Shun. Chen Shun was a big shot in the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. He didn't expect the person who came to greet him to be Chen Chen. Oh, our hall master suddenly has something to do and can't come, Qi Yuan said indifferently. Exactly what happened to actually make your dean miss the competition this time? Chen Chen asked curiously. It's nothing. The Burning Sky sect seems to be up to something, so the hall master has to stay in the courtyard and doesn't dare to leave. Qi Yuan explained. He had already thought of a countermeasure. What? Chun Chin's eyes immediately lit up. Does the Burning Sky sect want to start a war with my Yingtian sect again? The Yingtian sect and the Burning Sky sect were sworn enemies. These two forces had been fighting for countless years, and countless cultivators had died in their battles. The Burning Sky sect was constantly thinking of ways to destroy the Yingtian sect, but the Yingtian sect was not to be trifled with. All right, follow me. As Chun Chin spoke, he walked forward. The crowd followed Chin Chun and came to a courtyard. This is your residence, Chun Chun said to Qi Yuan. Thank you, Brother Chen, Qi Yuan quickly said. He didn't dare to offend Chin Chun. The show is about to start. Chapter 37-29. Although Gu Fei had sealed his cultivation, his divine sense was still at the quasi-supreme level. As long as he was willing, no one could sense the existence of his divine sense. Yes, The most powerful aura should belong to Ancestor Ing Tian. Gu Fei immediately sensed the powerful aura emanating from the spirit mountain in the ancestral land of Ing Tian sect. Although the other party was also a quasi-supreme, his cultivation was much lower than Gu Fei's. There were also strong and weak quasi-supremes. Although the fellow suspected to be Ancestor Ing Tian was a quasi-supreme, his cultivation was only at the mid-level quasi-supreme level. By now, Gu Fei's cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the quasi-supremacy realm. A pinnacle of the quasi-supremacy realm was more than enough to suppress other quasi-supremacies. Under the envelopment of Gu Fei's divine sense, there were more than a dozen auras more dazzling than the divine suns in the sky. Those were holy venerables. More than a dozen holy venerables, nearly 100 saint emperors, hundreds of saint kings, and countless saints. This was the power of Ing Tian sect. If a single Ing Tian sect had so many experts, it would be unimaginable in the mortal realm or even the heavenly realm. One could imagine how powerful the cultivation forces of the ancestral realm were. If I control Ing Tian sect, the wood race will go crazy, haha. Gu Fei was overjoyed. He had fought with the wood race in the ancestral god realm, so there was quite a bit of enmity between them. Ing Tian sect was one of the major forces under the wood race. The territory controlled by the wood race was unimaginably large, even larger than any of the 5 divine realms of the ancestral god realm. The ancestral god realm was simply too large enough to contain the myriad races of the ancestral god realm. After entering the courtyard, the Grand Elder and the others directly sat on the ground. They knew that Yang Zhan definitely didn't come to the ancestral god realm to play. Something big was about to happen in the ancestral god realm, which made the Grand Elder and the others panic. After all, this was the ancestral god realm, where experts were as common as clouds. If any part of their plan was exposed, they would die without a burial ground. Among the 5 young disciples who had come to the ancestral land of Ing Tian sect, one of them was the eldest disciple of the Hall Master who had been killed by Yang Zhan, Shangguan Feixiong. The reason he had brought Shangguan Feixiong was because he was the eldest disciple of the 36th monastery's Hall Master. Quite a few people had seen him in the Ing Tian sect's ancestral land. If he didn't come, people would be suspicious. The other 2 were Great Elder Qi Yuan's eldest and second disciple. The 12 elders were already scared out of their wits by Yang Zhan. They did not dare to resist Yang Zhan, but Shangguan Feixiong was a variable. Yang Zhan had killed his master. This enmity was absolutely irreconcilable. The group of elders did not want to bring Shangguan Feixiong here. According to the group of elders, it would be best if they killed Shangguan Feixiong and the other Hall Master's disciples. However, in Gu Fei's eyes, Shangguan Feixiong was no different from an ant. What kind of storm could he cause? At this time, experts had gathered in the Ing Tian sect. Quite a few of the powers that had good relations with the Ing Tian sect had come. The competition between the 36 monasteries was a grand occasion. Oh! Just at this moment, Gu Fei suddenly sensed a Saint Venerate's aura rapidly approaching. A war chariot pulled by 3 true dragons descended from the sky, directly charging into the Ing Tian sect's ancestral land. No one dared to stop it. Who is that? He actually directly charged into the Ing Tian sect's ancestral land. The war chariot flew directly over everyone's heads. Everyone saw the war chariot. How arrogant! How arrogant! Do you know who that person on the war chariot is? Who is it? Is it a major figure from some power? Quiet down. You can't provoke that person. Someone lowered their voice. The place Gu Fei and the others were in was one of the places the Ing Tian sect received guests. There were many independent courtyards here, and those courtyards were situated in a small valley. That's a major figure from the wood race. Someone said, "What?" As soon as he said this, everyone immediately shut their mouths and didn't dare to say anything else. Someone from the wood race had also come to watch the battle. Moreover, this person had a high status in the entire wood race. He was the grandson of an ancestor of the wood race. At this moment, a beam of immortal light shot out from the ancestral mountain of the Ing Tian sect. Within the light, a figure could be vaguely seen. It was an expert with the appearance of a young man. Ancestor Ing Tian has personally come out to welcome you. Gu Fei couldn't help feeling a little surprised when he sensed this scene. It seemed that this guy from the wood race was really someone. Soon, the grandson of the wood race's ancestor was personally welcomed into the Yingtian ancestral mountain by ancestor Yingtian. This was enough to show that this expert from the wood race had an extraordinary status. One had to know that the Yingtian ancestral mountain was a forbidden area that only ancestor Yingtian had the right to enter. Everyone was shocked. The war chariot directly landed on the Yingtian ancestral mountain, and a youth in purple clothes walked down from it. "So it's him." Someone almost cried out. "One of the 9 princes of the wood race, Mu Chun?" An older saint muttered to himself as he looked at the purple-robed youth walking down from the chariot on Yingtian ancestral mountain. Mu Chun. Gu Fei couldn't help but frown. This guy couldn't be very old. Perhaps he had cultivated for less than 300 years. For cultivators in the ancestral realm, he really was too young. He had only cultivated for 300 years to become a Saint Venerable. If this was in the human realm or the heaven realm, it would be absolutely impossible. Even Gu Fei himself couldn't become a saint sovereign in such a short amount of time. At his level of cultivation, time was no longer that important. Some old monsters even needed hundreds or even thousands of years to come out of seclusion once. At this time, experts arrived one after another on war chariots or on mounts. These people had a vast and mighty presence of the divine Tao. They were all experts of the divine Tao. There was even a quasi-sovereign among them. This quasi-sovereign was also personally received by ancestor Yingtian and brought into the Yingtian ancestral mountain. This was the second person to be received by ancestor Yingtian into the Yingtian ancestral mountain. A distinguished guest that the ancestor personally came out to greet naturally couldn't be a nobody. Very quickly, Gu Fei learned about the background of the quasi-supremacy stage martial artist from the conversations of the people around him. It was a large sect under the command of the wood race, just like the Yingtian sect. It was called the Wutian sect, and the quasi-sovereign was the Wutian sect's patriarch, ancestor Wutian. Very well, then I'll subdue the Yingtian sect and the Wutian sect at the same time. Hee. This way, even the wood race will probably suffer a great loss. Chapter 3730. The 36th monastery's competition would be held the day after tomorrow. At this time, all the major figures were gathering in the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. The wood race's Mu Chun had quite a few followers, and many of them had come for him. Otherwise, with just the patriarch's face, he wouldn't have been able to invite so many major figures. For example, the Heavenless sect's patriarch, the Ten Extinction Palace's master, and the Azure Cloud Path's Tao master. They were all formidable existences that could stand on the same level as the patriarch. No one knew better than the patriarch why these people had come. Those major figures constantly appeared, drawing gasps of admiration. But Gu Fei just smiled. With all these fellows gathered, it would save him a lot of trouble. He hadn't expected so many major figures to come watch. When the time came, he would completely wipe them all out and make those wood race fellows cough up blood. Whether it was the Ten Extinction Palace or the Azure Cloud Path, they weren't any weaker than the Yingtian sect. In fact, the Azure Cloud Path was even stronger than the Yingtian sect. It seems that Mu Chun wants to use the Yingtian sect's 36th monastery's competition to gather his followers. What is he planning? Gu Fei vaguely guessed that something major was about to happen. Whatever Mu Chun wanted to do had nothing to do with him. Time passed. He remained in his courtyard the entire time, not leaving. The 12 elders were also obediently waiting in the courtyard. Gu Fei had used Yangzhan to place a kind of restriction on their bodies. Their lives were in the hands of a single thought from Gu Fei. Shangguan Feixiong was extremely depressed. He had always wanted to spread the news that the 36th monastery was under Yangzhan's control, but he had never had the chance. That was because the other elders and disciples were constantly watching him. What made Shangguan Feixiong feel even more despair was that the 12 elders were constantly using their divine senses to lock onto him. If anything happened to him, they would immediately notice. The monastery's elders also had no choice. Their lives were in Yangzhan's hands. Unless they weren't afraid of death, they were extremely afraid of death. Night descended, and heaven and earth became silent. Although there were many cultivators in the Ingtian sect's ancestral land, no one made the slightest sound. Cultivators also needed to rest and cultivate. The ancestral ground of Ingtian sect was also a rare treasure land. Spiritual energy gathered here, and the density of the spiritual energy was very high. For cultivators, this kind of place was naturally a holy land for cultivation. Many people took this opportunity to cultivate in the Azure Dragon Pearl spitting land for a few days. For an ordinary cultivator, being able to cultivate in such a holy land was definitely a great fortune. The night passed uneventfully. On the second day, when the sun was high up in the sky, Gu Fei finally opened his eyes. At this time, Yang Zhan walked in from outside with a plate of immortal fruits in his hands. Because of the concentration of spiritual energy in the Ingtian ancestral land, the immortal fruits here contained more spiritual energy than other places, especially those immortal herbs on Ingtian ancestral mountain. Even the most ordinary immortal herb on the mountain was tens of thousands of years old. This was because the spirit qi in the ancestral mountain was too dense. Any spirit herb that was planted on it for a year was equivalent to hundreds or even thousands of years in other places. Spiritual energy was very important to the growth of immortal herbs. The age mentioned here was actually referring to the medicinal properties of the immortal herbs. Brother Fei, that brat Shangwan Feixiong will cause trouble sooner or later. We can't let him stay here. Yang Zhan closed the door and placed the plate of fruit on the table beside Gu Fei, then lowered his voice and said. Gu Fei picked up a red immortal fruit and threw it into his mouth. What are you afraid of? That brat won't be able to cause any trouble. If I want to, I can take over this place right now. As expected, Brother Fei is awesome. Yang Zhan smiled and gave Gu Fei a thumbs up. Play around first, then make a move. That way it won't be so boring. Gu Fei said. The immortal fruits of Ingtian sect were not bad, but they were several grades lower than the immortal fruits in his inner world. Gu Fei glanced at Yang Zhan and frowned. Brother Fei, you. Yang Zhan was embarrassed by Gu Fei's gaze. He was a straight man and didn't want to be turned gay. I'll help you. Gu Fei directly grabbed Yang Zhan. Yang Zhan was startled. In the next moment, he felt the world spin around him. Then he found that he and Gu Fei were standing on the shore of a small lake. This lake was incredible. Immortal energy surged, and immortal light occasionally shot out. Immortal mist covered the surface of the lake, and there seemed to be immortal silhouettes faintly discernible within. Next to the lake was a fruit tree that Yang Zhan had never seen before. Divine fruits grew on the tree, and yin and yang energy revolved around them. Yang Zhan looked around dumbfoundedly. Get in. Gu Fei sent Yang Zhan flying into the lake with a kick. Brother Fei, you. Yang Zhan was startled and wanted to fly back to the shore. But a moment later, he found that he couldn't fly at all. Plop. Yang Zhan fell directly into the lake. In the next moment, he felt pure immortal energy seeping into his body through his pores. Yang Zhan was both startled and delighted. He hastily sat cross-legged in the water and began to cultivate. Soon, the immortal light enveloped him, turning him into an immortal cocoon. Gu Fei couldn't help but nod. This fellow wasn't bad. Yang Zhan's cultivation was simply too low, so Gu Fei didn't want to personally take action for the time being. However, with the strength of Yang Zhan's fleshly body, it was impossible for him to withstand the power of a holy venerate, or even a quasi-supreme being. Therefore, Gu Fei decided to fulfill Yang Zhan's wish. He brought him to the celestial transformation lake in his inner world and threw him into the celestial transformation lake. Once his physical body became an immortal, he'd eat an immortal transformation grass and undergo a heavenly tribulation to become an immortal. Greetings, Master. An old man silently appeared behind Gu Fei. Gu Fei only nodded and didn't say anything. This old man was the old clan leader of the Ming clan. At this time, the old clan leader's cultivation base had already broken through to the semi-saint realm, which surprised Gu Fei. Watch over that fellow inside. After saying that, Gu Fei took a step forward and instantly disappeared into the void. Yes, Master. The old clan leader of the Ming clan hurriedly accepted the order. After Gu Fei left, he stood up and looked at the figure in the immortal transformation lake. Just who is this little fellow? He's actually so lucky to catch Master's eye and be brought to the immortal transformation lake. The Ming clan lord muttered to himself. It had been a long time since Master had brought a stranger into his inner world. Could it be that he wanted to take this little fellow as a disciple? The Ming clan lord was incomparably envious. This little fellow was going to reach the heavens in a single step. Chapter 37-31. Compared to Wang Long and Ling Feng, Yang Zhan had indeed reached the heavens in a single bound. This was the importance of standing on the right side. Wang Long and Ling Feng's mistake was standing on the wrong side. Even if Wang Long could enter Ying Tian sect, his achievements would be limited. As for Ling Feng, there was probably no one left in the world of cultivation. At this time, Gu Fei's figure appeared outside the valley where Yin lived. When he arrived at the entrance of the valley, a green figure jumped out and blocked Gu Fei's path. Halt! Don't you know that this is a forbidden area? It was a 17 or 18-year-old girl dressed in green. She was curiously looking at Gu Fei. You are? Gu Fei looked at the girl dressed in green. She was petite and had delicate facial features. Her entire body was filled with a kind of spiritual energy. He was a little surprised. This was where Yin lived. Why would an outsider appear here? Could she be a disciple of Yin? Yin was the last disciple of Danding School. She had the responsibility of inheriting the orthodoxy. She originally wanted to pass the orthodoxy to Gu Ling, but Gu Ling didn't want to mess around with alchemy. Therefore, Yin was quite depressed. I already said that this is a forbidden area. Why are you still not leaving? The girl dressed in green was a little unhappy. She frowned and said, I'm not an outsider. Gu Fei touched his nose in embarrassment. This was the first time he was stopped on his way home. The girl dressed in green was stunned. Not an outsider? How could it be? Her master only had one disciple. No outsider had ever come here. How dare this guy say he wasn't an outsider? Could this guy be one of those thieves who wanted to sneak in to steal the divine medicine? Recently, there seemed to be some mysterious people around the valley. Those people seemed to want to enter the valley to steal the divine medicine. They didn't know her master's background, so they dared to come here to steal the divine medicine. However, no one had ever been able to sneak into the valley. This was because the entire valley was shrouded in a huge formation. This black-clothed youth actually dared to openly enter the valley. This was the first time Lu Yun encountered such a thing. You'd better leave before I get angry. Lu Yun stared at Gu Fei and said coldly, Sigh, I'm really not an outsider. Gu Fei shook his head helplessly. If you don't leave, I'm going to get angry. Lu Yun raised her willowy eyebrows as she stared at Gu Fei. With a flip of her right hand, an ancient cauldron the size of a fist appeared in her hand. Cauldron of myriad medicines? I didn't expect her to give it to you. Gu Fei glanced at the ancient cauldron in Lu Yun's hand and said, You know about this treasure? Lu Yun was startled, looking at Gu Fei in bewilderment. My name is Gu Fei. You go in and tell the people inside that Gu Fei is back. Gu Fei shrugged and said, If he wanted to go in, no one could stop him. But he didn't want to scare this little girl. What did you say your name was? When Lu Yun heard Gu Fei's words, she was so shocked that she almost dropped the myriad drug universe cauldron in her hand. You're called Gu Fei? Lu Yun was so shocked that her voice began to tremble. She suddenly remembered something and hurriedly turned around and rushed into the valley. Gu Fei shook his head helplessly when he saw this. Judging from this little girl's reaction, Yin must have mentioned him to her. Soon, an immortal figure floated out of the valley. This fairy's white robes fluttered in the wind and her features were peerless. She held the hand of a little girl who looked like an immortal spirit. Her entire body emitted a pure and holy immortal light. You're back. Yin smiled at Gu Fei as she held the little girl's hand. She was still as gentle as ever. When Gu Fei and Yin were together, his state of mind would become incomparably calm. This person had a feeling of being aloof from worldly affairs. Although this feeling was rare for him, it wasn't a good thing. This was because he wasn't strong enough. Only when he was strong enough would he stop and enjoy this luxury of peace. Gu Fei smiled and nodded. He then glanced at the green-robed girl who was hiding behind Yin. and walked into the valley with Yin. Gu Fei and Yin stayed in a daze for a long time and talked about their own experiences. The little girl that he saved bounced around and played by the side. They couldn't help but think of their daughter. Guling had been on the human race's ancient road for some time now. Therefore, Gu Fei and Yin weren't too worried about Guling. With Gu Fei's current cultivation, even if Guling's soul was destroyed, he could still help her reassemble her spiritual soul and reconstruct her physical body so that she could come back to life. In the valley, Gu Fei was enjoying this rare moment of peace. He drank the tea that Yin had personally brewed for him and ate the immortal fruits that Yin had personally picked. Yin had taken in a disciple. It was the green-robed girl who stopped Gu Fei outside the valley. In Gu Fei's inner world, only the Ming tribe was a normal human. The Undying tribe was naturally not human. Therefore, LV Yun was actually from the Ming tribe. Today, the Ming tribe was recuperating in Gu Fei's inner world. They were developing very quickly. There were hundreds of thousands of tribe members, and they were already the largest tribe in the inner world. Out of the hundreds of thousands of people in the Ming clan, not everyone could cultivate to become an immortal. Lu Yun was an orphan of the Ming clan. Yin found him and brought him back to the valley to be taken in as a disciple. The little girl that Gu Fei saved was also taken in as a disciple by Yin. The little girl was still young, which was a good thing for Yin. She could help the little girl refine her physical body from a young age. With gradual improvement, the little girl's future achievements would definitely be much higher than LV Yun's. Gu Fei stayed for a long time before leaving the valley and heading to the immortal transformation lake. Master! The old clan leader of the Ming tribe quickly jumped out. How is that little guy? Gu Fei looked into the immortal transformation lake and saw a ball of immortal light appear in the lake. Within the immortal light, a figure could be vaguely seen. Needless to say, the figure in the immortal light was Yang Zhan. This guy, with a thought, Gu Fei immediately sensed the changes that were happening to Yang Zhan, who was in the immortal transformation lake. He suddenly realized that Yang Zhan had completed the transformation from a mortal body to an immortal body. He was actually trying to break through to the immortal realm. Tribulation clouds started to appear in the sky above the immortal transformation lake. You can't undergo tribulation in the immortal transformation lake. Gu Fei waved his hand and Yang Zhan flew out of the immortal transformation lake. The next moment, the void distorted and Gu Fei brought Yang Zhan to an ancient mountain range. Rumble. Chapter 37-32. Yang Zhan's tribulation was very smooth. In less than half a day, he had completed the process of ascending from mortal to immortal. A powerful immortal aura spread out from his body, intimidating the surroundings. This should do. Gu Fei brought the newly ascended Yang Zhan out of his inner world. At this time, it was only half a day in the outside world. It was dusk outside, and many people had gathered outside Gu Fei's door. The 12 elders were all present, and so were the disciples of the other elders. However, Shangguan Feixiong was not outside. Could it be? Gu Fei thought of something and couldn't help but frown. You go out first. Gu Fei transmitted his voice to Yang Zhan. At this time, he was still pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. Even the elders didn't know his actual strength, let alone the elders' disciples. Yes, Brother Fei. Yang Zhan quickly opened the door and walked out. What's going on? Yang Zhan's expression sank as he stared at the Grand Elder. That Shangguan Feixiong. The Grand Elder wanted to say something but stopped. At this time, he was extremely shocked because Yang Zhan's body was actually emitting a powerful immortal aura. This caused the other elders to be bewildered. Could it be that this guy was not going to pretend anymore? It turned out that Shangguan Feixiong had really escaped. This guy was quite impressive, taking advantage of the fact that he went to the toilet and directly hid in a manure pit, using this method to escape. Shangguan Feixiong's personality was very suitable to be a formidable character. If he was allowed to grow up, he would definitely become a formidable character. You bunch of trash. Where did that guy go? Yang Zhan directly cursed. No one dared to speak, and the 12 elders were even more terrified. He should have escaped into the mountains outside, the Grand Elder said after thinking for a moment. Yang Zhan snapped. Then why aren't you guys going to capture that guy for me? Yes, master. The 12 elders quickly accepted the order and directly rushed out. At this time, either they or Shangguan Feixiong would die. However, this was the ancestral land of Yingtian sect, so they had to be as careful as possible. The place where Gu Fei and the others were at was where the Yingtian sect received their guests. This place was a bit far from where the sect masters of the branch sects of the Yingtian sect lived. If Shangguan Feixiong wanted to send a message, he would have to pass through the mountains and reach the Yingtian ancestral palace. In the ancestral grounds of the Yingtian sect, cultivators below the Saint Emperor realm were not allowed to fly. They could only run on foot. Therefore, Shangguan Feixiong should still be in the mountains outside. These guys are too unreliable. They actually waited for me to come out before chasing after Shangguan Feixiong. Yang Zhan cursed. He was quite talented in acting. Actually, it wasn't that the Great Elder and the others didn't want to chase after Shangguan Feixiong. It was because they didn't dare to alert the others. It wasn't that they didn't do anything. At least, up until now, the people nearby still didn't know what had happened. Shangguan Feixiong immediately fled into the mountains outside. It was precisely because of this that they waited for Yang Zhan to come out. After all, Shangguan Feixiong had to rely on his own 2 legs to run to the Yingtian ancestral palace to inform them. It would take more than half a day to run from the guest valley to the Yingtian ancestral hall. Brother Fei, what should we do? Yang Zhan was a fake great expert. Although he was calm after such a thing happened, he had no choice but to consult a real great expert. Don't worry, I'll deal with that guy, Gu Fei said. An almost invisible figure suddenly rushed out from his body and instantly disappeared into the void. Even Yang Zhan, who was beside him, didn't notice it. Yang Zhan, you're dead this time. Haha. In the mountains outside the guest valley of the Yingtian ancestral grounds, a figure was moving quickly. This person was Shangguan Feixiong. He had waited for so long, and finally, he had the chance to escape. He didn't dare to ask for help from the guests in the welcoming Immortal Valley because he was very clear about how terrifying Yang Zhan was. Even his own master, a Saint Emperor, wasn't a match for Yang Zhan, so how could the people in the welcoming Immortal Valley be a match for Yang Zhan? Shangguan Feixiong wanted to leave the guest valley as soon as possible before Yang Zhan discovered him. Then, he would go to the Yingtian ancestral hall to inform them. Only the sect master of the Yingtian subsect and above could kill a monster like Yang Zhan. However, Shangguan Feixiong still didn't know that Yang Zhan was a fake great expert. The real great expert was still hiding behind Yang Zhan. No one could see through Gu Fei's strength. Even the 12 elders thought that Gu Fei was a good disciple that Yang Zhan had taken a fancy to. Master, I can finally avenge you. At this time, a tall decorated archway appeared in front of him. It was the place where the Yingtian Ancestral Hall was located. The Yingtian Ancestral Hall was behind the decorated archway. Shangguan Feixiong was overjoyed and quickly rushed out of the mountains. However, at this time, a figure descended from the sky and landed directly in front of Shangguan Feixiong with his back facing him. What? Shangguan Feixiong was shocked. The Yingtian Ancestral Hall was just in front of him, but someone had caught up to him at this time. This made him so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Could it be the Great Elder? Shangguan Feixiong focused his gaze and realized that the person who had caught up to him wasn't the Great Elder. At this time, the person slowly turned around. How could it be you? Shangguan Feixiong's eyes widened when he saw the person. He looked at the person in disbelief. The person who had caught up to him was actually Gu Fei. In fact, what Shangguan Feixiong didn't know was that this Gu Fei wasn't his real body, but a clone. Hee, are you surprised? Gu Fei's clone grinned, revealing his pearly white teeth. Could it be? Shangguan Feixiong seemed to have thought of something, and he was even more shocked. All right, I'll send you on your way. I'm having fun right now, and I can't let you spoil my mood. After saying that, Gu Fei's doppelganger closed in on Shangguan Feixiong. I'll fight it out with you. Shangguan Feixiong roared in anger and attacked Gu Fei's clone with all his might. A huge black hole appeared in the void and swallowed Gu Fei's clone. Gu Fei's clone smiled and took a step forward. He passed through the terrifying black hole and arrived in front of Shangguan Feixiong. What? Shangguan Feixiong was so scared that he collapsed on the ground Hmm, it's boring to kill you like this. Not bad, huh? Gu Fei's clone suddenly thought of something fun. He pointed his finger at Shangguan Feixiong's forehead and disappeared into the void. At this time, a figure descended from the sky and landed in front of Shangguan Feixiong. Shangguan Feixiong, it's you. What are you doing here? The person shouted at Shangguan Feixiong. At this time, the black hole that Shangguan Feixiong had created moved forward, and everything in its path was swallowed up, causing a huge commotion. Chapter 37-33. Gu Fei had originally been planning on killing Shangguan Feixiong, but he had suddenly changed his mind and directly placed a forbidden art on Gu Feixiong's body. This kind of forbidden art could make Shangguan Feixiong fall into an illusion and completely stimulate his potential. At this time, he viewed the disciple who had come to investigate as his enemy, Yang Zhan. Die! Yang Zhan, who had fallen into a state of madness, let out a furious roar and directly pounced towards the disciple of the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. Shangguan Feixiong, you've gone crazy. Seeing this, the disciple from the Yingtian sect's ancestral land was startled and hurriedly retreated. Clang! Two battle spears shot out from Shangguan Feixiong's body and instantly pierced through the retreating disciple of the Yingtian sect's ancestral land. That disciple looked at Shangguan Feixiong in disbelief. In the next moment, his consciousness sank into endless darkness. He had been torn to pieces by Shangguan Feixiong. This scene happened to be witnessed by a few disciples from the ancestral ground of the Yingtian sect who had rushed over after hearing the commotion. They were quite frightened by this scene. Shangguan Feixiong, you dare kill senior apprentice Brother Wang? You deserve death. Committing murder in the ancestral land. You deserve death. Those disciples' cultivation bases were all incomparably powerful. It had to be known that any disciple who could enter the ancestral land to cultivate had their own outstanding points. Their cultivation bases were definitely not below Shangguan Feixiong's. In Shangguan Feixiong's eyes, these people were his enemies. With a roar, he pounced forward. His two battle spears turned into two golden dragons that shot towards the disciples of the Yingtian sect's ancestral land to kill them. Shangguan Feixiong was a famous golden dragon battle king from the 36th monastery. He was an immortal king, and his combat power was even greater than an ordinary elder's. The name of the golden dragon battle king came from an immortal Tao divine item he possessed. That divine item was called the golden dragon battle spear, and it was extremely powerful. Preposterous. Those disciples were both startled and infuriated. They directly attacked, and multiple immortal items smashed toward Shangguan Feixiong. Those powerful immortal Tao divine items released terrifying fluctuations of immortal Tao energy that caused heaven and earth to shake. What happened? At this time, the battle outside the Yingtian ancestral hall had alarmed many people. More than a dozen powerful auras burst out from the heavenly ancestral palace, causing the world to tremble. More than a dozen divine senses rushed out from the ancestral palace, sweeping towards Shangguan Feixiong and the others. At this time, Gu Fei and the others also walked out from the mountain ridge. Seeing this scene, they were all stunned. What happened? The 1236th monastery's elders were all dumbfounded. Wasn't Shangguan Feixiong supposed to report to the Yingtian Ancestor Palace? Why is he fighting with the disciples of the Yingtian Ancestor Land right outside the palace? From the looks of it, Shangguan Feixiong was fighting with the disciples of Yingtian Ancestor Land with his life, as if there was a deep hatred between them. Could it be? The elders all glanced at Yang Zhan. At this time, Yang Zhan had already put away his shocked expression and began to act pretentious. There was nothing he could do about it. Who told him to be a fake great master? Apart from acting cool, the fake expert was still acting cool. Could it be that he was really going to fight someone for real? As expected, it was Master who did it. The 12 elders felt even more reverence for Yang Zhan. Boom! Just at this moment, those immortal Tao divine weapons that had been attacking Shangguan Feixiong were all sent flying. Those disciples of the Yingtian ancestor land screamed as they were torn apart by the two golden dragons, their bodies and souls destroyed. A rain of blood began to fall from the sky. Everyone was dumbfounded. Shangguan Feixiong really dared to attack. This was the Ingtian ancestor land. It had been many years since the Ingtian ancestor land had last seen the heavenless sect's corrupt devil path. It had been a long time since the Ingtian ancestral land had seen blood. Hee, this little fellow's combat power isn't bad, said Yang Zhan proudly. The 12 elders were speechless. At this time, Shangguan Feixiong's potential had been completely stimulated by Gu Fei's forbidden art. His black hair had turned white. His cultivation base was still rising, and he was now infinitely close to the immortal emperor realm. That surprised even Gu Fei. Shangguan Feixiong's potential wasn't bad. It was no wonder the 36th monastery's hall master had accepted him as a disciple and become the 36th monastery's senior apprentice brother. Boom. Just at this moment, an immortal seal suddenly flew out of the Ingtian ancestor palace and slammed down on Shangguan Feixiong. A powerful immortal Tao energy descended from the immortal seal, and the space around it felt like it was about to collapse. An elder from the Ingtian ancestor palace had taken action. Shangguan Feixiong's eyes had already turned red. He roared crazily as he soared into the sky. 2 golden dragons intertwined and collided with the immortal seal. Boom! With a loud explosion, the 2 intertwining golden dragons knocked the immortal seal away. Then, Shangguan Feixiong rode his golden dragon battle spear and charged toward the mountain peak. What? Even an elder was unable to kill Shangguan Feixiong. Impudent! A voice rang out from within the Skyline Ancestor Palace. After that, a terrifying immortal Tao energy erupted. A huge golden hand grabbed out from within the Skyline Ancestor Palace, grabbing towards Shangguan Feixiong, who was charging towards him. However, at this moment, Shangguan Feixiong fused with the golden dragon battle spear and directly pierced through the golden hand, causing it to explode in an instant. A muffled groan came from the Ingtian ancestor palace. At the next moment, a figure shone with immortal light charged out. The immortal aura that emanated from this person shook the surrounding space. It was a white-haired old man in purple robes. The purple-robed old man reached out with his right hand and grabbed at the golden dragon spear that had pierced through his leg. Clang! The old man's right hand slammed against the golden dragon formed by the spear. The sound of metal rubbing against metal rang out. However, in the next moment, the purple-robed old man was out of luck. He couldn't hold onto the golden dragon battle spear at all. Instead, the golden dragon battle spear whipped its tail and sent him flying. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. That was an elder, but he couldn't even withstand a single blow. It wasn't that the elder wasn't strong enough, but that Shangguan Feixiong was too crazy. Chapter 37-34. Shangguan Feixiong had entered a berserk state. At this time, the Ingtian sect's experts were all enemies he had to eliminate. At this time, he had already charged into the Ingtian Ancestor Palace. He was fighting against one of the Ingtian Ancestor Palace's elders. Roar! Shangguan Feixiong was like a terrifying beast, crazily using his golden dragon battle spear to fight against that elder. Berserk immortal Tao energy erupted from his body. He was overdrafting his life force to fight. His black hair had turned white. That was the result of his body rapidly exhausting its potential. Boom! Bang! Loud sounds of collisions rang out in the square in front of the Ingtian Ancestral Hall. A golden dragon was clashing with an immortal shadow that was glowing with a metallic immortal light. It's Elder Jin Xian. Could it be that even he can't take down Shangguan Feixiong? People were incomparably shocked. At this time, quite a few people had gathered outside the Ingtian Ancestor Palace. Some of the experts who had come to the Ingtian sect as guests had also appeared. Isn't that the 36th monastery's hall master's disciple, Shangguan Feixiong? What's going on? He's actually fighting against Elder Jin Xian? People were incomparably shocked. Shangguan Feixiong seems to have encountered a problem. Some people could already see that something was wrong with Shangguan Feixiong. Roar! Shangguan Feixiong suddenly roared, and his immortal Tao energy suddenly soared. In the next instant, his golden dragon battle spear stabbed into Elder Jin Xian's body. Elder Jin Xian was a humanoid immortal Tao divine weapon. When the golden dragon battle spear stabbed into his body, it only caused sparks. It was unable to break through his terrifying defense. However, the immense impact from Shangguan Feixiong's golden dragon battle spear sent Elder Jian Xian flying into the air. A loud boom rang out, and one of the massive stone pillars on the plaza was smashed in half, causing it to fall from the sky. Startled cries rang out. Shangguan Feixiong crazily attacked Elder Jian Xian, his two golden dragon battle spears unleashing their full power. It was like he was holding two golden dragons as he beat Elder Jian Xian. At this time, Elder Jian Xian coughed up blood. He had never met such a reckless guy before. He didn't even need to defend himself. He just wanted to take his opponent down with him. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Elder Jian Xian was an immortal emperor realm elder of Yingtian sect's ancestral land. Yet, he was beaten up by Shangguan Feixiong. The disciples of Yingtian sect who knew Elder Jian Xian's background couldn't believe their eyes. Elder Jian Xian cultivated a body-tempering art of Yingtian sect. This body-tempering art was actually a secret art of the immortal Tao. It wasn't a pure body-tempering art. However, even though Shangguan Feixiong could not break through Elder Jian Xian's defense, it did not mean that he could not injure him. Shangguan Feixiong struck Elder Jian Xian's body with his golden dragon dual battle spears, causing golden blood to ooze out of his mouth and nose. Elder Jian Xian felt as if all the bones in his body were about to shatter. Seeing this, the disciples of the ancestral land of the Yingtian sect could no longer sit still. Let's stop here. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the ancestral hall. Then, a sword light shot out from the hall like a bolt of lightning. Swoosh! The sword light instantly pierced through Shangguan Feixiong's immortal body. In the next moment, Shangguan Feixiong's entire body came to a halt. A gentle breeze blew past, and Shangguan Feixiong turned into a pile of ash that dissipated into the void. The sword light made a turn in the sky above the square and flew back into the ancestral hall, vanishing from sight. Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene, killing Shangguan Feixiong with a single sword strike. Such cultivation and combat power were countless times stronger than Elder Jian Xian. Clang! The two golden dragon battle spears fell to the ground, producing a crisp sound of collision. At this time, the dual golden dragon battle spears gradually quieted down. What the hell is going on? At this time, a sage-like old man walked out from the ancestral hall and scanned the crowd. A heart-palpitating immortal aura spread from his body. With a wave of his hand, the dual golden dragon battle spears on the ground flew towards him and landed in his hand. Yellow Sect Master, we also don't know what happened to Shangguan Feixiong. The immortal king who attacked Shangguan Feixiong just now said hastily. Investigate thoroughly, the old man said with incomparable dignity. At this time, rays of immortal light came from all directions and landed outside the ancestral hall. When the light dissipated, the immortal silhouettes were revealed. Apart from those on the ancestral mountain, experts from all over the ancestral land of the Yingtian sect were alarmed and impatiently rushed to the ancestral hall. The show is over. Someone couldn't help but feel disappointed at this scene. Of the 12 branch sect masters of the Yingtian sect, 10 had already arrived. There were still 2 branch sect masters who hadn't arrived yet. The headmasters of the Yingtian branch sect were extremely powerful. They were all at the holy sovereign level. This old man was also a holy sovereign. Needless to say, this old man was also one of the headmasters of one of the 12 branch sections. If a saint sovereign wanted to kill Shangguan Feixiong, it would be as easy as flipping a hand. Just at this time, a figure directly walked out of the crowd. Investigate what? This was all done by me. What do you think? Yang Zhan directly walked out. What? Everyone was startled. As for the 36th monastery's elders and disciples, they were completely dumbfounded. Just what was this fellow thinking? Is he crazy? Someone cried out in alarm. You. The old man in front of the palace looked at Yang Zhan disdainfully. This fellow was just an immortal god, but he dared to talk to him like this? It's me. I even killed the 36th monastery's hall master. What do you think? Yang Zhan continued. Although he was acting calm, inside, he was both shocked and afraid. He was a fake expert, but he had no choice but to stand out. What? He really is crazy. He actually said he killed the 36th monastery's hall master? Someone disdainfully said, "Who does he think he is? Is it possible for an immortal god to kill an immortal emperor?" No one believed Yang Zhan's words. That was too inconceivable. How could an immortal god kill an immortal emperor? Humph, Yang Zhan sneered. In the next instant, heaven-shaking killing intent erupted from his body. The spectators were all startled. They looked at Yang Zhan in disbelief, their eyes about to fall to the ground. Chapter 37-35. Yang Zhan stood in front of the Ying Tian sect's ancestral palace. Although he didn't want to, he had no choice. He had to continue acting as a fake expert. "It was you?" In front of the gate of the ancestral hall, the sage-like old man looked down at Yang Zhan. His eyes flashed, and his expression turned solemn. "It was me," said Yang Zhan proudly. "Impossible. With your cultivation base, there's no way you're a match for Shangguan Feixiong." The elder icily glared at Yang Zhan, a disdainful expression on his face. At this time, the 36th monastery's elders who had come with Yang Zhan were almost paralyzed with fear. Yang Zhan couldn't play around like this. This was the Ying Tian sect's ancestral land. Causing trouble here, wasn't that just courting death? "Little fellow, you dare be so arrogant in front of the Yellow Sect's sect master? You can die now." A voice suddenly rang out from the side. That elder Jin Xian who had been beaten by Shangguan Feixiong charged at Yang Zhan, an immortal seal in his hand. A powerful immortal king's aura erupted from his body, causing all the spectating cultivators' hearts to tremble. After being beaten by Shangguan Feixiong, elder Jin Xian had lost all face. He needed to establish his might, and now that Yang Zhan had walked out, he had the perfect opportunity to do so. Noisy. Yang Zhan didn't even look at elder Jin Xian. With a casual wave of his hand, elder Jin Xian seemed to have been smashed into pieces by an ancient divine mountain. Even the immortal seal in elder Jin Xian's hand shattered in the air. Yang Zhan acted as if he had just slapped an ant to death. He casually walked over to the bottom of the steps and raised his head to look at the Yellow Sect's sect master. The Ying Tian sect's 12 branch sects were split into heaven, earth, Xian, Huang, universe, primal, and wind, fire, thunder, and rain. The elder at the top of the steps was the Yellow Sect's sect master. The Yellow Sect's sect master was a Saint Venerable, an existence second only to the Ying Tian patriarch. But this little fellow dared to challenge him? Everyone was dumbfounded. That elder Jin Xian had been killed with a single slap from Yang Zhan. This kind of combat power had also frightened everyone. Only Gu Fei watched this scene from the side with a smile. The show had finally begun. He was going to imprint all the important figures of the Ying Tian sect. Yang Zhan was in the light, and he was in the dark. He wanted to capture all the experts in the ancestral grounds of Ying Tian sect. Seeing that Yang Zhan had slapped elder Jin Xian to death and openly committed murder in front of him, the Yellow Sect's sectmaster's face fell. No matter how well-mannered he was still infuriated. "All right, the game is about to end here. I hereby announce that I, Yang Zhan, am taking over Ying Tian sect. Ancestor Ying Tian, hurry up and get your ass over here and kneel before this daddy's feet," Yang Zhan said to everyone. His voice instantly spread throughout the entire Ying Tian sect's ancestral land. What? The ancestral grounds of the Ying Tian clan immediately burst into an uproar. Everyone was shocked to the extreme. "Is this guy stupid? You want to make Ying Tianzong submit to you by yourself?" "Yang Zhan? Where did this lunatic come from?" Everyone outside the Ying Tian ancestral hall, and even everyone in the ancestral grounds of Ying Tian sect, were dumbfounded. They didn't know what was going on. Several extremely powerful divine senses rushed out from the Ying Tian ancestral mountain and swept towards the Ying Tian ancestral hall. The powerful divine senses descended from the sky and instantly landed on Yang Zhan. At this moment, Yang Zhan could be said to be the center of attention, dazzling to the extreme. He seemed to be standing at the peak of his life. At this moment, everyone looked at Yang Zhan in front of the Ying Tian ancestral hall as if they were looking at a monster. Haha, The yellow sect master stared at Yang Zhan and suddenly burst into laughter. What's so funny? Yang Zhan frowned and said, You really are crazy. Do you think that by killing Elder Jin Xian, you can make the entire Yingtian sect submit to you? The yellow sect master's face turned gloomy. He stared at Yang Zhan, who was at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes flickered, and immortal patterns interweaved in his eyes. Swoosh! In the next moment, two flames shot out of the yellow sect master's eyes towards Yang Zhan. At such a close distance, Yang Zhan simply didn't have time to dodge the sudden attack from the yellow sect master. However, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared in the next moment. The two flames that shot out of the yellow sect master's eyes exploded in front of Yang Zhan, as if they had hit an invisible wall. Yang Zhan smiled strangely. His figure suddenly disappeared into the void, as if he had vanished into thin air. Those who had locked onto Yang Zhan with their divine senses were stunned. They actually couldn't sense Yang Zhan's aura anymore. How was this possible? Even the big shots on the Yingtian ancestral mountain were indescribably shocked. How is this possible? The big shots in the Yingtian ancestral grounds couldn't believe it, but it was the truth. In the next moment, the yellow sect master's body shook. He looked down and saw a hand piercing through his chest. He looked at the bloody hand in disbelief. At this time, a wave of exclamations rang out. Everyone was dumbfounded because Yang Zhan had actually appeared behind the yellow sect master, and his right hand had pierced through the yellow sect master's sacred body. The yellow sect master was a holy venerate, but Yang Zhan's hand could actually pierce through his sacred body. Could it be that his hand was much stronger than a holy venerate's sacred body? Yang Zhan's right hand shook. The yellow sect master only had time to let out a scream before his entire body instantly exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist. His body and soul were directly destroyed. However, not a single drop of blood was splashed on Yang Zhan's body. The yellow sect master, one of Yingtian's 12 sects, was actually killed just like that. Everyone in the square had their mouths wide open, and their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. This was a holy venerate, not a bunch of mortals outside. The strength of a holy venerate was unimaginable, but now, a holy venerate was actually as weak as an ant in front of Yang Zhan. Who's not convinced? Yang Zhan stood on the steps in front of the Yingtian ancestral hall, proudly scanning the crowd. At this time, the elders who came with Yang Zhan were both surprised and happy. They didn't expect Yang Zhan to be so strong that he could even kill a holy venerate so easily. In this way, they really had a chance to control the entire Yingtian sect. This was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rise in power. At the thought of this, they were extremely excited. I'm standing right here. Whoever's not convinced, come and fight me. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.